students harbored malicious intentions and quietly approached her. Suddenly, one of them grabbed her neck. Lu Karen was also pinned down by a male student. Zhang Mingming, with a ferocious look, threatened, "If you don't take us with you, I will strangle her right now." Liang Yu urgently tried to intervene. "Stop it. We are all classmates. You can't do this." But they were deaf to Liang Yu's words, seeing her merely as a bodyguard. Zhang Yi, looking resigned, turned to Uncle Yu and Chun Lei and said with a laugh, "They dare to threaten me. Don't they know the last person who threatened me is now under 2 meters of snow?" While appearing casual, Zhang Yi had already switched to 2 police pistols and, without hesitation, fired 4 shots, dropping the 4 perpetrators. The surrounding students screamed in horror, having never witnessed such a scene. Liang Yu was also shocked, trembling as she said, "These are just kids. How can you be so cruel? You monster." Zhang Yi scoffed, "Do you think they're still kids? They know how to take classmates as hostages. You call that childish?" He ignored their moral blackmail and approached Yang Xinxin, who was now expressionless, evidently shocked by the recent events. But as long as her mind was still functioning, it shouldn't be a big problem after her sister talked to her. He then extended his hand towards Yang Xinxin. "Let's go. Your brother-in-law will take you home." Yang Xinxin, snapping out of her daze, hesitantly said, "Can you also take my friend?" She looked towards Lu Karen. Zhang Yi thought to himself that Lu Karen seemed like an innocent and naive girl. Although Lu Karen looked pretty, he didn't need someone just to eat his food. Seeing Zhang Yi's hesitation, Yang Xinxin quickly added, "Lu Karen was also specially admitted like me. This school only admits 2 types of students, children of high officials and wealthy magnates, and geniuses recruited for their talents to enhance the school's reputation. Lu Karen is a genius in the field of mechanics, having won numerous awards both domestically and internationally. Her abilities are on par with a PhD from MIT. This wheelchair I'm using was custom made for me by her. It's perfect." Hearing this, Zhang Yi took a second look at Lu Karen, realizing that his shelter could indeed use a skilled mechanic. The combination of their skills in hardware and software could offer endless possibilities. He then looked at Lu Karen seriously and asked, "Tell me, what value can you provide?" Lu Karen's eyes lit up as she quickly responded, "I have a deep understanding of automotive industrial design and maintenance, and I've also studied various firearms. If you take me with you, I can use my skills to modify cars and firearms for you. Plus, I've been studying forging techniques since I was young, so I'm also very skilled in crafting cold weapons. Anything you need, I can handle." Zhang Yi felt like he had found a treasure. He admitted that this girl had intrigued him. His shelter truly needed a talent like hers. Standing up and pushing Yang Xinxin's wheelchair, he feigned reluctance but was inwardly delighted. "For the sake of Yang Xinxin's sister, I'll take you with us." Lu Karen nearly jumped for joy, knowing that staying behind would mean enduring her classmates' harassment. This was her only chance for survival. She quickly and sensibly helped Zhang Yi with the wheelchair. Seeing Lu Karen earn Zhang Yi's favor through her abilities, other students started to crowd around, eagerly trying to promote themselves. "Mr. Zhang, I can be useful too. I'm an excellent driver. I can drive for you. I'm fluent in 8 languages. I can be your translator," they pleaded. While it was undeniable that there were indeed many talented individuals among the students, Zhang Yi struggled to see how their skills would be of use in the post-apocalyptic world. Suddenly, a long-haired girl bravely stepped forward from the crowd, blocking Zhang Yi's path. "You can't just leave like this. Teacher Liang was close to killing that monster. It was your interference that allowed it to escape. If you're going to leave, at least help us deal with the monster first." She was Shin Miaoka, the class committee leader. Zhang Yi, holding his gun, spoke coldly, "I admire your courage, but let me be clear. Whether I came or not, your fate would be the same, death." Seeing his firm stance, the other students dared not say more. Before leaving, Yang Xinxin looked at Liang Yu. "Teacher Liang, thank you for taking care of me all this time." Although none of her classmates were good people, Teacher Liang had indeed been a responsible and caring teacher. Yang Xinxin knew that Liang Yu would never abandon the other students to leave with them, so she didn't invite her. After Zhang Yi and his group had walked some distance, Liang Yu suddenly got an idea. "Let's follow them. I'm severely injured, and that monster won't be in a good condition either. It probably won't dare to come out for a while. Following them, at least we can find a way out of here." So, they followed Zhang Yi's group from a distance. Chun Lei asked softly, "Is it okay for them to follow us like this?" Zhang Yi scoffed, "If you feel sorry for them, go save them. If you want to get rid of them, a slight effort from you would be enough to bury them all alive right here." Chun Lei was startled. "They've done nothing to me. I couldn't do such a thing." Zhang Yi quickened his pace. "When you're poor, you look after yourself. When you're rich, you can have many wives and concubines. I can't afford to take care of these pampered sons and daughters of privilege." Chun Lei nodded quickly, and soon they reached the surface. Zhang Yi turned to Chun Lei. "You go with Uncle Yu on the motorcycle." Chun Lei appeared reluctant. "It's going to be freezing." Zhang Yi handed him a helmet. "You, an ice and snow ability user, are afraid of the cold? Wouldn't that be a joke to others?" Chun Lei then realized it might not be so bad. "It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a ride." As Zhang Yi gently placed Yang Xinxin in the front passenger seat, Lu Karen tactfully took the back seat. They then left Azure Sky Academy swiftly. Back on the surface, Liang Yu and her group, witnessing the departing vehicle, were stunned. Shin Miaoka, looking lost, asked, "What should we do now? Everything around us is was covered in snow. At least going back, we have shelter from the wind and snow. Wu Chenyu stepped forward with a smile, unlocking his phone. Let me handle this. As expected, there's signal outside. He planned to contact his influential father to arrange for them to be taken to West Mountain Base. Inside the warm car, Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen were immersed in comfort. Zhang Yi waved his hand, and 2 bottles of drinks and some bread appeared before them. You must be starving. Go ahead and replenish some energy, but don't eat too quickly. We don't want any stomach issues, he advised. The girls, moved to tears, gratefully accepted the food. Brother Zhang, you're really kind, they said before eagerly beginning to eat. Once they finished, Zhang Yi started a conversation with them. Yang Xinxin, you're really impressive, he said, catching her off guard. How am I impressive? I've always been seen as a burden by everyone. If it weren't for Teacher Liang and Lu Karen always protecting and taking care of me, I probably would have died long ago. Lu Karen quickly joined in. We're good sisters. No need to be formal. Zhang Yi smiled enigmatically. Anyway, I think you're definitely extraordinary. Despite being disabled from a young age, you've survived 2 months in the post-apocalyptic world under the threat of that monster. Once or twice could be attributed to luck, or Lu Karen's protection, but this long duration seems quite intriguing. I don't think it's just a coincidence. Am I right? Lu Karen looked confused, while Yang Xinxin's innocent smile gradually faded, replaced by a slightly disturbed expression. She responded, Brother Zhang Yi, you really are extraordinary. No wonder you've managed to survive so stylishly until now and even take care of my 2 clumsy sisters. Zhang Yi laughed. All these coincidences coming together, it's hard not to be suspicious, especially earlier, during the battle between Teacher Liang and the big cat. You only asked me to stop them, not to protect Teacher Liang. This suggests your goal might have been to protect that monster without harming Liang Yu. So I deduced that the big cat is a pet you've raised, right? And your classmates are its living food, aren't they? Yang Xinxin's expression turned profound. Brother Zhang, you're indeed not simple, but you've only guessed about 60 or 70% correctly. I'm not as cruel as you imagine. I'm not the owner of Flower. I never thought of hurting my classmates. However, Flower has indeed been protecting me. At this, Lu Karen realized Flower is the stray cat you used to feed, right? So the monster is Flower, mutated? Yang Xinxin confirmed this, explaining that Flower had never attacked them because of their previous connection. Lu Karen was in disbelief. Every time the monster appeared, it scared her so much she could barely stand, yet it never harmed them. She always thought they were just lucky. Zhang Yi's interest in the big cat grew. When he first arrived at Azure Sky Academy, it was difficult to locate Yang Xinxin, but the appearance of the big cat seemed to guide him, leading him quickly to the gymnasium. This high-intelligence mutant animal, if tamed, could be an excellent asset, given that animals are often more loyal than humans. Looking at Yang Xinxin with a playful expression, Zhang Yi said, So you mean that the cat didn't attack you just because you had fed it and it felt grateful? I think there's more to it than that. Yang Xinxin's awkward smile revealed a deeper cunning. Brother Zhang indeed has keen insight. After mutating, Flower's intelligence evolved, and it even understands human language. I had informed it in advance that someone would come to pick me up and told it not to attack strangers rashly. Fortunately, Brother Zhang is powerful, so no harm came to you. Zhang Yi pressed further. So, the deaths of your classmates were also orchestrated by you through the big cat? Yang Xinxin denied any direct involvement. There were indeed people among my classmates whom I disliked, but I never wished them dead. Most of them died because they had previously mistreated Flower when it was still a stray cat. Plus, Flower needed to feed. However, the situation gradually spiraled out of control. Many classmates started to distort their mentality, thinking I, as a disabled person, was dragging everyone down, even deliberately pushing me out as a human shield. As she spoke, Yang Xinxin's face twisted into a sinister smile. These ridiculous fools. They never realized that Flower would never harm me. Every time I survived unscathed, those with malicious intentions towards me grew more resentful. I enjoyed watching them hate me and ultimately meet their tragic end. Lu Karen fell silent, recalling the numerous narrow escapes, now realizing that everything indeed made sense. Yang Xinxin, playing with a bottle in her hand as if petting a cat, continued, So eventually, I stopped caring. The people who bullied me dying was better off. Later, Flower played with them, eliminating them one by one. I can't say it was entirely unrelated to me. Suddenly, she looked at Zhang Yi with anticipation. So, do you think what I did was cruel? Zhang Yi stared at her for 2 seconds. Cruel? This young lady is a kindred spirit. If it were me, I would have been far more ruthless. He then sneered. I came to rescue you solely because your sisters begged me, and because of your computer skills. I'm not concerned with the other matters. Yang Xinxin found his reasoning acceptable. After all, in this post-apocalyptic world, those without value were inevitably discarded. Zhang Yi shifted the conversation back to practical matters. As long as you follow my instructions and demonstrate your value in the team, I'll ensure you're well taken care of. That's not difficult for me. The girls, clearly impressed, continued their enthusiastic admiration. Zhang Yi then pondered another question. Yang Xinxin, if you had the means to contact the outside world all this time, why wait until now? And how did you solve the issue with the signal? Yang Xinxin smiled cunningly. Brother Zhang, I am one of the world's top hackers. Solving a signal issue is child's play for me, especially with Flower's help. As for contacting you, I never counted on my foolish sisters. You, Zhang Yi, were my target all along. This revelation left Zhang Yi feeling outmaneuvered in terms of intellect. The rescue he thought he was conducting had been a trap set by the genius girl. He asked, "You say I was your target from the start, but we had no prior connection. How so?" Yang Xinshin, with a hint of pride, explained, "I thought my stepsister had died long ago. Given her dim-witted nature, she was only fit for the entertainment industry. I never expected her to save me. It was only when I started receiving some junk messages." While speaking, Yang Xinshin pulled out a cell phone from her pocket. This phone had a very unique design, unlike any model available on the market, suggesting it was a custom-made device. No wonder it had such powerful signal reception capabilities. Yang Xinshin continued, "Don't underestimate this phone in my hand. Its performance is comparable to a supercomputer. With just a flick of my finger, all your secrets are no secrets to me." As she said this, Yang Xinshin suddenly took on a love-struck expression. "Brother Zhang, you are my idol. A mere warehouse manager, thriving in this post-apocalyptic world." Zhang Yi felt a chill down his spine, realizing the ease with which a top hacker like Yang Xinshin could access someone's secrets in this information age. Zhang Yi began to panic and asked uneasily, "What do you know?" Yang Xinshin, poking at her phone, confidently replied, "You could say I know everything. From the Walmart theft to your bank transfer records, from building your safe house to almost killing the entire neighborhood, and then later going to the shelter in Su Family Town." As she spoke, Yang Xinshin's face turned red with excitement, her eyes filled with adoration. "After reading your story, I just think you're so amazing, brother. You're like my idol." Zhang Yi, with a speechless expression, thought to himself, "Turns out she's a yandere. I can't handle someone like this. Being involved with her could be either good or bad." He took a sharp breath and asked, "So, you used your two sisters to contact me, asking me to save you?" Yang Xinshin, acting cute, nodded, "Something like that. But even if you hadn't come to save me, I would have definitely come to you. Based on all your actions, I figured you were the cautious type. I wasn't sure if you'd come, but you did, and I'm so happy and touched." Hearing this, Zhang Yi started to doubt his life. He had always thought he was in control, only to fall into someone else's trap. This girl's cunning is terrifying, but such a person is better as an ally than an enemy. Then, with a smile, Zhang Yi asked, "I can see you're close with that mutated cat named Flower. Does it completely obey your orders?" Yang Xinshin shook her head. "It seems you've never had a cat, brother. Cats can only be friends. If you're good to it, it will be good to you. But if you want to be its master, that's nearly impossible, especially with a stray cat." Zhang Yi sighed. "Too bad. I thought if I could make this powerful cat mine, it would be perfect." Just then, a huge figure appeared in the rearview mirror, the mighty mutated cat. Zhang Yi muttered to himself, "It seems this cat is quite attached to Yang Xinshin. Is it worried about its master?" Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel secretly delighted. The big cat had indeed followed them. Although he knew that such stray cats were extremely difficult to tame and wouldn't easily trust humans, he had plenty of high-quality cat food and dried fish in his warehouse. Coupled with his relationship with Yang Xinshin, there was still a chance he could win the cat over. Seeing Flower chasing after the car, Yang Xinshin even opened the window. Even Lu Karen, who was initially terrified of this creature, started to find the cat cute. Soon, the group returned to the shelter. To thank Chun Lei, Zhang Yi gave him a pillow, which made him as happy as a 300-pound child. For Uncle Yu, Zhang Yi brought out 2 large barrels of refined oil, exactly what he needed. Both Uncle Yu and Chun Lei left happily, promising to help whenever needed in the future. After they parted ways, Zhang Yi led the 2 girls into the shelter. As soon as they entered, Lu Karen became so excited that she started crying, exclaiming, "Brother Zhang, you are so amazing. This place is like heaven. It's hard to imagine such a happy place exists in a post-apocalyptic world." Yang Xinshin also looked around with wide eyes, full of astonishment. Zhang Yi, patting Lu Karen on the shoulder, said, "As long as you two behave and help me solve problems, you'll always have a place in this shelter. I'll make sure you're well fed and clothed." Suddenly, Yang Xinshin blushed and asked, "Does helping you solve problems include personal matters?" Zhang Yi was speechless. This girl really dares to ask, he thought. Oblivious Lu Karen didn't understand the implication. Zhang Yi then knelt down, pinching Yang Xinshin's cheek affectionately, and said, "You're quite knowledgeable, aren't you? But don't feel pressured. Your main task is to maintain the shelter's cybersecurity. I won't force you into anything else." Zhang Yi knew his limits. Despite finding the girl attractive, he wasn't the type to fall for everyone he met. After hearing Zhang Yi's words, Yang Xinshin felt a sense of loss. She looked at her disabled legs and wondered if he was rejecting her because of her disability. Just then, Yang Mi rushed down from upstairs, excitedly shouting, "Brother Zhang, you really saved Yang Xinshin. I'm so glad you're alive." She then grabbed Yang Xinshin's hand. "You silly girl, why didn't you contact me earlier? Do you know how worried your sister was?" Yang Xinshin abruptly shook off Yang Mi's hand, saying, "What's the use of contacting you earlier? You're just an actress who became famous by exploiting men's fantasies. Do you need me to tell you your own worth? If I hadn't found out you were with Brother Zhang Yi, I wouldn't bother contacting someone like you." you. Yang Mi was visibly embarrassed, while Zhang Yi sat on the sofa, disinterestedly eating melon seeds, thinking to himself that the relationship between these cousins seemed rather strained. He understood why Yang Xinxin, a highly intelligent computer genius, would look down on a celebrity like Yang Mi, who gained fame through her physical appearance. Shokir, listening to their conversation, focused on the fact that Yang Xinxin referred to Zhang Yi as brother Zhang Yi. She felt a pang of jealousy, knowing Yang Xinxin's high IQ of 180 made her respect for someone quite rare. Since when has she been so polite to anyone, she wondered. The shelter became lively with their arrival. After some introductions, it turned out that Lu Karen also came from a highly educated family, both parents being university professors. She was polite and complimented her two new sisters, praising their family's strong genes and their beauty, which made both of them quite pleased. Zhang Yi then stood up and patted Yang Mi, instructing her to prepare a meal to welcome the newcomers. He also asked Shokir to prepare rooms for Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen. The girls went to take a bath, and soon, the meal was ready. After bathing, they seemed to look at Zhang Yi with more affection, grateful for his help and the comfortable home he provided. During the meal, Zhang Yi began assigning tasks. Yang Xinxin, from now on, you'll handle the shelter's cybersecurity. That's not too difficult for you, right? Yang Xinxin confidently responded, don't worry, brother Zhang Yi, I've got this. Then Zhang Yi turned to Lu Karen, who immediately tensed up and sat up straight, hands on her knees. Since you're an expert in mechanics, making weapons and ammunition shouldn't be hard for you, right? Zhang Yi looked intently at Lu Karen, who shyly replied, well, it's not difficult for me, but I need specialized equipment, and ammunition materials are strictly controlled. It's hard for ordinary people to access them. However, if it's about making cold weapons, that's much simpler. With the right metal and forging equipment, I can handle it. Zhang Yi smiled faintly, no problem, come with me. He then led Lu Karen to a spacious room on the underground level. With a swift motion, he revealed a large array of heavy machinery. Zhang Yi wasn't very familiar with these machines himself. Take a look and see if these will be useful. If not, I have more, or I can find some from outside factories if necessary. Lu Karen's eyes lit up at the sight of the advanced equipment. These are no ordinary machines. Most are imported high-end equipment costing millions. Excitedly, Lu Karen assured Zhang Yi, this is more than enough. There are a few machines that might not be useful, but I can dismantle them for parts. Despite her delicate appearance, as a genius in the field of mechanics, her knowledge was extensive and her hands-on skills were exceptional. She flexed her well-toned biceps, reassuring him, don't worry, brother Zhang Yi, I've got this under control. Seeing her enthusiasm, Zhang Yi felt genuinely pleased. Since you're an expert in mechanics, you must be familiar with materials too. He then took out the long sword he had taken from Liang Yu. Could you check this for me? See if there's anything special about this long sword. Maybe it's some ancient divine weapon. When I took it, your teacher looked like he wanted to devour me. Lu Karen took the sword, her face alight with excitement as if she were examining a rare treasure. This is a masterpiece of modern cold weaponry, the Dragon's Roar. Lu Karen, with a sense of reluctance, sheathed the Dragon's Roar and excitedly explained, this sword, named Dragon's Roar, was personally forged by the greatest swordsmith, Yuan Lin. It's not an ancient divine weapon, but a pinnacle of modern technology. It's made from adamant alloy, a metal developed just 10 years ago and the hardest material known so far. Zhang Yi couldn't help but marvel. Seems like my trip to Azure Sky Academy was indeed fruitful. Lu Karen continued, adamant alloy's hardness is comparable to the legendary vibranium, but it's extremely expensive to produce and not suitable for mass military manufacturing. When crafted by a master into a cold weapon, it can easily cut through iron and even split diamonds. This long sword is particularly exceptional. It was awarded to teacher Liang as a high honor for bravely protecting a leader while serving as a bodyguard. It's of great significance to him, almost more important than her life. Holding the extraordinary sword, Zhang Yi felt secretly thrilled. No wonder that fierce woman could fight a demonic cat with her mortal body. Having such a treasure for self-defense is perfect. As dinner time approached, Zhang Yi prepared a lavish feast to welcome Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen. They hadn't enjoyed a warm meal in a long time. At first, they ate modestly, but gradually their dining became more extravagant. Lu Karen, biting into a large piece of meat, mumbled, the school was actually quite well stocked. With only a few hundred teachers and students, it had numerous high-end cafeterias and a warehouse full of international ingredients. There were even several large convenience stores. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. The concept of such an elite school was beyond his understanding. Then Lu Karen looked at Zhang Yi with admiration. I'm so glad brother Zhang Yi came. In this cold weather, even with the school's supplies, we might have frozen to death eventually. Zhang Yi looked at Lu Karen with a brotherly gaze. You took shelter in the spacious gymnasium, huddling together for warmth, so it wasn't too cold. But now that you're here, just prove your worth, and I assure you'll be well fed and clothed. After dinner, everyone relaxed on the sofa while Zhang Yi turned on the TV. Among the few news broadcasts still airing, they received unsettling news. The extreme cold weather, persisting for 2 months, had caused global disruption. Regions were fighting fiercely for resources, and the concept of nation-states had all but collapsed. Some armed organizations had rapidly risen, using force forced to control resources and even enslaving survivors. This news undoubtedly cast a shadow of oppression over them. Zhang Yi grew tense, realizing the situation was worse than he had thought. Yang Mi, seeking comfort, clung to him and said anxiously, "What should we do? I'm so scared. How did things suddenly turn out like this?" Zhang Yi, maintaining his composure, replied, "This was expected. Previously, these armed forces had some restraints, at least respecting decisions from national leaders. But now, everyone has realized that this ice age won't end soon, so they've become fearless in their actions, relying on their own military strength." Yang Xinxin added, "It's like the rules and regulations of some organizations. They are there, and even if not everyone follows them, their existence deters extreme actions. But now, there's no order left." Zhang Yi nodded in agreement with Yang Xinxin and sighed. "The only outcome is that local armed forces may transform into warlords. This means a warlord era is likely approaching soon. Once it reaches that stage, the lives of ordinary people will become as insignificant as grass." Then, he wheeled Yang Xinxin to the control room. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the massive supercomputer, resembling something out of a sci-fi movie. Zhang Yi patted her shoulder. "The shelter's cybersecurity is now your responsibility." Yang Xinxin, transfixed on the holographic screen, nodded repeatedly. Zhang Yi, watching her intense focus, thought to himself, having such a high IQ computer genius who is paraplegic in this control room is perfect. He granted Yang Xinxin operational authority just below his own, ensuring she couldn't alter core system components, but could maintain network security. Yang Xinxin began to work her fingers like a pianist. Zhang Yi, standing behind her, couldn't understand what she was doing, but felt impressed by her expertise. In just 2 minutes, Yang Xinxin completed a thorough check of the shelter's entire network. She paused her work and shared her analysis. This system was the world's most advanced personal network system a decade ago and remains top tier even now. Its artificial intelligence is incredibly powerful, capable of self-repairing vulnerabilities, theoretically leaving no security loopholes. Her tone shifted. "However, that's true only for ordinary hackers. Top hackers can still find vulnerabilities. In these past 10 days alone, there have been thousands of attempted network attacks. Had I not arrived, I estimate your firewall would have been breached in a couple of weeks, crippling the entire shelter." Zhang Yi felt a chill hearing this. "I was right to be concerned. After the Lufungai incident, the shelter has probably been under surveillance, and the attackers are no ordinary people." Anxiously, Zhang Yi asked Yang Xinxin, "Can you fend off these attacks?" Yang Xinxin smirked confidently. "Brother Zhang Yi, I am a world-class top hacker. Cybersecurity is my forte, not to mention offensive hacking. The attackers might be skilled, but to me, they're just amateurs. I'll start by setting up basic defenses, creating a new encrypted network. We can't use the old routers anymore since wireless networks are the easiest to breach." Within a few minutes of efficient work, Yang Xinxin turned back to Zhang Yi and triumphantly declared, "Brother, I've done it." Her beaming face seemed to say, "Praise me now." Zhang Yi, understanding the cue, smiled and gently patted her head. "Yang Xinxin, you're truly impressive." Then, Yang Xinxin turned back to her work, a hint of disdain on her face. "Let's see who dares to invade my network. Now it's my turn to invade theirs." As a top-level hacker, constantly tackling more challenging tasks was her instinct. Zhang Yi, still cautious, advised, "If you're not sure, it's better to just protect our own network. There's no need to take unnecessary risks." However, his curiosity about the organizations spying on them was piqued. "If you can gather some intelligence about them, try it." Yang Xinxin assured him with a smile, "Don't worry, brother. Judging by their previous attempts, they are nowhere near my level. Even if I can't breach their network, I can at least mask my own tracks. They won't be able to trace me." Just then, Zhou Qir burst into the control room, her voice trembling. "There's a monster outside the shelter's door, as tall as a building." Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin exchanged a glance and chuckled. "Seems like your cat really can't let go of you. It even found its way here." Yang Xinxin tilted her head. "Flower trusts only me now. It must be worried and followed me here." Zhang Yi contemplated. "This might be the perfect opportunity to tame it. We need to do it, or the people across the river at Su Family Town might be in danger." With this in mind, Zhang Yi wheeled Yang Xinxin out of the control room. Zhou Qir, pale with fear, clung to Zhang Yi for comfort. "There's a huge cat lying outside the window, staring inside. Lu Karen said we need Yang Xinxin to come out." Zhang Yi reassured her, "It's okay. This big cat is a friend of Yang Xinxin." He then pushed Yang Xinxin towards the floor-to-ceiling window. Flower lay quietly in the snow, seemingly without malice, occasionally meowing as if asking for food. Upon seeing Yang Xinxin, it closed its eyes, appearing tired, and began to doze off. It seemed to have been waiting there for a while, covered in a layer of snow. Zhang Yi thought, this cat must be exhausted from its fight with Liang Yu, with many sword wounds on its body. Now it's tired, hungry, and in pain. This might be the best time to tame it. Deciding this, Zhang Yi prepared to take Yang Xinxin outside. "Let's go feed this poor big cat." When Yang Xinxin appeared, the big cat indeed showed a look of joy. However, upon seeing Zhang Yi behind her, it cautiously stepped back. After all, they had faced each other directly when they first arrived at Azure Sky Academy. Zhang Yi noticed the big cat's wariness and immediately opened a portal to another dimension. With a whoosh, heaps of cat food and dried fish fell out. Zhang Yi picked up a bag of cat food and began to tease the big cat, saying, "Want to try some? It's chaotic outside now. Why don't you become my pet? I have plenty of this cat food." The big cat stared intensely at the cat food in Zhang Yi's hand, unable to stop swallowing its saliva. Zhang Yi was secretly pleased, thinking, it's just a cat after all. It's not hard to deal with as long as there's food, but he was quickly proven wrong. The big cat suddenly stood up, its eyes instantly becoming alert as if to say, "You think you can tame me with just a bit of cat food? You're underestimating me." Yang Xinxin, sitting in a wheelchair, smiled and said, "Brother Zhang Yi, stray cats are much more cautious than pet cats. It took me several months to become friends with it." Zhang Yi had plenty of time to build trust with the big cat. He was just worried it might attack the village across the river. He wasn't concerned about the lives of the people in Su family town, but was afraid of spoiling his relationship with Chunlei, since it was they who had lured the cat here. After some thought, Zhang Yi said to Flower, "Although you don't trust me yet, I can still provide you with food. In return, you have to promise not to attack the villagers across the river. Can you do that?" The cat, indeed intelligent, quickly understood Zhang Yi's request and nodded happily. Having reached an agreement, Zhang Yi returned to the shelter, thinking there was plenty of pet snacks in the other dimension to feed the creature. However, with such a large cat, those snacks wouldn't last long, so he would need to find other food to feed it in the future. Just as he returned to the living room, he heard Zhokir and Yang Mi's surprised and delighted exclamations. Zhang Yi looked out the window to find the big cat had disappeared. Zhokir excitedly pulled Zhang Yi to look at the pile of cat food. Zhang Yi widened his eyes in surprise. The creature could change its size at will. The originally over 10-meter-long giant mutant cat had turned into a normal-sized tabby cat. Zhang Yi was quite pleased as this would save a lot on food. That's when Lu Karen suddenly realized something, explaining, "If it has always been this size, our deceased classmates wouldn't have been enough to fill its stomach, right?" Yang Xinxin also analyzed, saying, "Every time Flower appears, it's very sudden, which is completely illogical. With such a large size, it's impossible to be so silent, even avoiding detection by a master like Teacher Liang. All signs indicate that it has always been able to change its size at will." Suddenly, Yang Xinxin furrowed her brows in worry and said, "There seems to be blood on Flower." Zhang Yi immediately bent down for a closer look. Indeed, there is a cut on Flower's body. Although the blood is frozen, the wound looks quite deep. This must be the injury inflicted by Liang Yu's dragon's roar. No wonder it looks so listless. But Flower doesn't seem to care much about this wound. After all, for a stray cat, such injuries might not be a big deal. Zhang Yi pondered for a moment. "It seems I should prepare some medicine for it tomorrow and take the opportunity to build some trust. But I definitely can't go now. Cats are very wary when eating and could see me as a threat to their food. Of course, I can't let Yang Xinxin do it either, as I need to build a good relationship with the cat myself." That night, Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen shared a room. Lu Karen, lying in the warm, spacious room, joked with Yang Xinxin, "Am I dreaming? This morning we were freezing and starving in a snow cave, and now we're in a heavenly room." Yang Xinxin smiled gently. "All this is thanks to Brother Zhang Yi. He's my idol. To have such a super shelter in this post-apocalyptic world." Hearing this, Lu Karen clenched her fists with resolve. "I must prove my worth in the future and not disappoint Brother Zhang's care for me." Curious, Yang Xinxin asked, "What did you do today?" Lu Karen excitedly replied, "I familiarized myself with the equipment. Next, I might need to craft some weapons. However, Brother doesn't seem to lack conventional firearms. Bullets and bombs might be more useful to him, so I'll focus on researching these kinds of weaponry." Lu Karen, grateful and aware of the debt she owed, spent the whole night contemplating Zhang Yi's potential needs. Early the next morning, Lu Karen shared her ideas with Zhang Yi, which coincided with his own thoughts. Zhang Yi also felt that the traps outside were too rudimentary. They might deter the brutes from Su family town, but were inadequate against more organized groups. Therefore, landmines and explosives were precisely what he needed. Lu Karen confidently assured him, "No problem, leave it to me." After Zhang Yi and his group left Azure Sky Academy, Liang Yu led the students to the surface. Wu Qingyu, elated, took out his phone to call his father, Wu Jiangwo, for rescue. The signal was stronger on the surface, and he soon contacted his father. After learning about their situation, Wu Jiangwo told them to stay put and not move, as he would arrange for someone to come for their rescue. The students cheered at the news, thrilled at the prospect of leaving the dreaded place. Some also tried contacting their families, but received no responses, leading them to fear the worst for their loved ones. However, some students felt a sense of unease. They wondered why Wu Qingyu's father, if he had the capability to rescue them, hadn't come to search for them earlier. Why wait until now? And if he didn't have the ability to save his son, why would he promise to do so? These questions also left Liang Yu extremely puzzled. Zhang Yi panicked, not expecting the Special Forces team from West Mountain Base to bring out a bunch of C4 explosives. After the Special Forces team discovered that bullets were unable to inflict any damage on the house, team leader Shinhong realized that the opponent in front of them was not ordinary. He was fully capable of capturing or even killing Xia Huanhuan and Lu Ziang. Shinhong ordered a halt to the meaningless shooting, deciding to first clear the ground traps. These were veterans experienced in warfare, who quickly located the grenades using modern technology, even uncovering the deeply buried anti-tank mines laid by Zhang Yi. However, every move they made was clearly observed. Zhang Yi decisively pressed the remote detonation device. The anti-tank bomb's power was astonishing, instantly killing the 2 soldiers closest to it. The shockwave also sent 3 nearby soldiers flying. Shinhong's eyes were almost bleeding with rage. Who exactly is he? Why does he have things only our troops possess? This scene made many think of retreating. The deputy commander hurriedly stepped forward to persuade. We don't yet fully understand the situation here, nor do we have heavy weapons and bomb disposal equipment. Let's return to base for instructions to avoid further casualties. Deputy Commander Yu Lang was still sensible. He had already sensed that this opponent was not someone they could handle, but Shinhong flatly rejected his suggestion. Aren't we the rescue team sent here? If we have to go back for support, where would I put my face? I don't believe the shelter has no weaknesses. Continue the attack. Shinhong was already too agitated. Eager to perform well in such an important mission, he couldn't return without any achievements. As the vanguard, he at least needed to gather some crucial intelligence about the villa. Otherwise, the deaths of those 6 brothers would be in vain. Shinhong ordered everyone to spread out and advance towards the shelter without any dead angles. His aim was to gather more information about the villa, hoping to find a weakness and avenge his fallen comrades. Yang Mi watched the scene with a worried expression. They looked so professional, they couldn't really find a flaw, could they? Zhang Yi, however, was not at all panicked. I have great confidence in the shelter. I practically check it every day. There are no external vulnerabilities. But Yang Mi was still worried. It's scary to have them searching so recklessly. Are you suggesting we should take the initiative to attack and stop their search? Attacking them is actually quite simple. I just want to see what other methods they have. After an investigation, the Special Forces team concluded this villa is just a defensively formidable iron fortress made of extremely advanced materials. However, its only flaw is that it cannot launch an offensive. They helplessly gazed at the villa, saying, it's not surprising to find such a structure in a wealthy area. It's just a rich man's fear of death that led to the creation of this iron turtle. Now that we've cleared the traps around his house, they can just wait to be attacked. At that moment, Shinhong had a sudden inspiration. We can concentrate the explosives and blow open a corner of the house, then rush in and finish them off. The deputy commander pondered. How much explosive would that require? Shinhong sneered. On the battlefield, even the most fortified bunkers can be blown open with enough explosive. Could his villa be more fortified than a military bunker? As long as we focus our firepower, we can definitely do it. So, everyone gathered their explosives at what they thought was the weakest point, ready to detonate. Seeing this, Zhang Yi immediately rose from his chair and said coldly, you think I've run out of tricks just because I've been holding back? Today, I'll teach you a good lesson. He then turned to Zhou Qi and Yang Mi behind him. You guys just stay here and enjoy the show. If you're scared, you can go hide in the basement. After placing all the explosives together, the leader decisively pressed the detonation button. A thunderous explosion followed, and everyone thought that if it couldn't flatten the building, it would at least create a breach. The massive explosion created a blizzard-like spread. Everyone eagerly advanced to inspect the effect of the explosion, but when the dust settled, they were all dumbfounded. A deep pit was formed on the ground, but the main building seemed completely unharmed. Everyone couldn't believe their eyes. The area below the wall was covered in some black material, meaning the villa was essentially a 360-degree alloy fortress. Team leader Shinhong was instantly stupefied. It seems we really need to go back and ask for support. The level of weapons we have is simply not enough. We must call the demolition team with larger quantities of explosives. To Zhang Yi, the mere dozen or so C4 explosives were hardly worth a glance. After all, this shelter was built to withstand nuclear attacks. He went to the second floor and took out a sniper rifle from a different space. At that moment, Deputy Commander Yu Lang's men brought over a heavy box. Upon opening it, Shinhong was overjoyed. How did you manage to bring this? This is excellent. It's a heavy sniper rifle capable of destroying a tank in one shot. Yu Lang aimed at the shelter's glass, confidently saying, even if that's bulletproof glass, it's unlikely to withstand my shot. Just as Zhang Yi reached the second floor with his sniper rifle, a loud gunshot rang out, startling him. Could this be the heavy sniper? A screeching friction sound came from the external glass. Zhang Yi went closer and saw a small white scratch on the glass. This is serious. If they were to fire millions of rounds like this, the glass might actually crack. Terrifying. Meanwhile, Yu Lang, holding the heavy sniper, began to question his life choices. After 2 seconds of silence, he broke down. I've used this gun to penetrate bunkers before. How could a mere villa? Shinhong came over to comfort him. The defensive power of this villa might be even more terrifying than West Mountain Base. It seems we should return and report to our superiors. We're almost out of weapons. Shinhong immediately ordered a retreat. Zhang Yi, observing from the second floor, saw them preparing to leave. He immediately ordered the windows to be opened and activated a dimensional gate in front. This meant all attacks from outside would be absorbed into the alternate space, while Zhang Yi's own attacks would remain unaffected. He set up his sniper rifle and aimed. When the retreating soldiers noticed the window opening, one shouted, "Captain Shin, the window on the second floor of the villa seems to be open." As they reported, they did not hesitate to shoot. As elite soldiers, their marksmanship was highly accurate, aiming straight for Zhang Yi's face. However, their bullets disappeared like stones sinking into the sea, all vanishing before reaching Zhang Yi. He smirked. "I've taken a fancy to that heavy sniper. It's not something ordinary people can get their hands on. Since you've come, don't think about leaving." As they fired, Zhang Yi also pulled the trigger, targeting the soldier carrying the box. Shinhong, seeing the figure on the second floor of the villa, showed a hint of joy. "I thought I had no way to get you, but now you've opened the window yourself. Everyone, fire at him." 20 people raised their guns and fired wildly, but Zhang Yi, with one hand on the dimensional gate and the other aiming and shooting calmly, accurately shot each in the head. It took the fall of 6 soldiers before they realized, "Why can't our bullets hit him?" Shinhong's pupils shrank sharply. This guy might be a mutant. Yu Lang, beside him, also widened his eyes. Could his ability be immunity to all attacks? Shinhong immediately ordered a retreat, knowing that if the opponent was indeed a mutant, they couldn't handle him with just their team. They all turned and ran. Shinhong shouted to his teammates, "Don't worry about the fallen brothers for now. Find cover quickly." Zhang Yi, through his scope, spotted the 2 team leaders and aimed at them, but with one shot, Shinhong and Yu Lang instantly disappeared from their spot, narrowly evading his attack. Zhang Yi was familiar with this scene. The same move had surprised him during the fight with Lu Ziang. Could these two be like that man, mutants transformed through modifications, even with almost identical abilities? After scanning the area, Zhang Yi realized that only 2 people seemed to have special abilities. He devised a plan and fired another shot, this time aiming not for the head, but for the legs of the soldiers. 2 soldiers who couldn't evade in time fell to the ground, clutching their legs in agony. Their comrades, witnessing such a scene, desperately wanted to rush out to help. They could bear the pain of leaving the bodies of their fallen brothers behind, but couldn't stand the thought of not helping their close comrades. However, Shinhong stopped them. "Nobody move. He's trying to draw us out. Rushing out now is suicide." Shinhong, still maintaining his calm, immediately thought of a countermeasure and shouted, "Throw all the smoke and incendiary grenades out." Instantly, the area near the injured soldiers was engulfed in rolling white smoke and blazing flames. With this approach, even with tactical goggles, no one could see anything. Shinhong took this opportunity to quickly send people for the rescue. Zhang Yi couldn't help but inwardly commend. They really are professional soldiers with combat discipline. He then smirked wickedly and reversed the direction of the dimensional gate. In the next second, all the bullets that had been absorbed into the alternate space suddenly poured out like a violent storm, instantly turning the 2 injured soldiers and 4 rescuers into sieves. Everyone was furious at this tactic, which was beyond their comprehension. Trembling, the soldiers said, "This man isn't human. We can't possibly fight against him." A young soldier, completely breaking down, shouted at Shinhong, "Captain, let's send a distress signal. Ask the base to send the battalion commander." Shinhong grabbed the soldier's collar. "Shut up. Weren't we the ones who came to rescue? Now asking for rescue ourselves. Where would that leave my face as the captain?" The soldiers were in utter despair, looking at their captain with terrified eyes. "That person is an invincible demon. How can we possibly stand against him? Rather than dying here, I'd rather be sent to the 4th life pod to pedal a bicycle." The Special Forces team was in a difficult situation, but Deputy Commander Yu Lang tried to reassure everyone. "Calm down, everyone. The fact that he's hiding inside and not coming out shows he still fears our strength. Let's keep our spirits up." Shinhong, looking worried, said gravely, "His marksmanship is as good as ours. We could be sniped at any moment. We can't just keep hiding here." Yu Lang then drew a plan in the snow, explaining his strategy. "His villa doesn't have a view without blind spots. If we break through a few houses in front of us and move through them, as long as we're out of his sight, even the best marksmanship won't help him." Zhang Yi, standing on his balcony, had probably guessed their escape plan. He didn't intend to leave the shelter to pursue them. Although their abilities were negligible, they were a highly coordinated team. Zhang Yi didn't want to take the risk. Moreover, his dimensional gate could only open in one direction. If he went out and faced attacks from multiple sides, it would be over. Meanwhile, at West Mountain Base, Chen Xinyan received a report from his secretary, Guro. He frowned deeply as he read, 12 soldiers killed. Shinhong and Yu Lang were ineffective, causing great loss to the base. I think they must be severely punished to set an example. Chen Xinyan pondered for a moment. In the past, he would have executed Shinhong and Yu Lang without hesitation, but now the base was short of personnel, and they had indeed brought back important intelligence. This isn't their fault. The opponent is too strong. But what's the background of this shelter? Why haven't I heard about it before? Is there any intelligence on this? Guro, prepared before coming, handed over a tablet displaying a map of Heavenly Sea City with several important locations marked. She briefed Chen Xinyan methodically, based on the reports from Shenhong and Yulang, and combining previous intelligence. The most likely suspect is the warehouse manager Zhang Yi. The original owner of the shelter was the billionaire Wang Siming, who reportedly spent $1 billion building it 10 years ago. It was taken as just entertainment news back then. However, now our engineers speculate that the shelter's defensive strength may surpass our West Mountain base. As for how Zhang Yi took over the shelter, that remains unknown. Chen Xinyan couldn't help but remark, "This kid is truly a chosen one, so lucky." In his eyes, Zhang Yi was just a small-time figure who had stumbled upon good fortune. Such individuals, even if they acquired power, would be limited by their narrow vision and shallow knowledge, eventually overwhelmed by their own abilities, unable to compare with someone of his stature. Chen Xinyan picked up the report again and read carefully. Southern Warehouse Manager, innate ability, immune to bullet attacks. Suddenly, he realized the crux of the matter. The place where Xia Huanhuan had trouble is only a few kilometers from his villa. He chased out of the shelter to kill Xia Huanhuan. Considering her ability to pass through walls, it's likely she discovered some damning secret of Zhang Yi's, giving him a reason to kill her. The biggest secret in the apocalypse is resources. A sharp glint appeared in his eyes. So, it seems the billions worth of resources from the southern warehouse are likely in his hands, hidden away with some ability. Excited, Chen Xinyan exclaimed, "This explains everything. We must capture Zhang Yi." Guro, slightly startled by the revelation, did not forget to flatter Chen Xinyan. "Congratulations, Lord Chen, for finding a massive amount of resources for our West Mountain base." Chen Xinyan nodded in satisfaction, clearly intending to take credit for the potential discovery of the resources. He began to fantasize about the prosperous life ahead, almost as if the resources were already in his hands. Indeed, if we really secure these resources, they could sustain the base for decades. Tossing the file onto the table, he decisively ordered, "Get Ling Feng here." Soon, Ling Feng relayed instructions to the teams of Shenhong and Yulang, directing them to temporarily head to Su East Village across the river. This move served two purposes. Firstly, to investigate the surrounding area in advance, and secondly, to wait there for the follow-up troops. Ever since Zhang Yi had warned Chunlei, the timid Chunlei had been living in fear every day, dreading the possibility of West Mountain base sending troops to raid his village. His worst fears materialized when a group of fully armed soldiers suddenly appeared in Su East Village. Chunlei hurriedly called Zhang Yi, "Brother Zhang, something terrible has happened." Zhang Yi immediately guessed that the soldiers might have gone to Su East Village. "Chunlei, don't panic. Just remember, these people are not the so-called government. They're rampaging through Heavenly Sea City, collecting resources without any regard for morality or law. You must be careful to hide your resources well, and be even more careful about your life." Chunlei was extremely anxious, "But don't worry about me, boss. If I want to run, nobody can catch me. Even you couldn't catch me last time. The problem is that these people have been welcomed as honored guests by our village chief, and now they won't listen to any of my advice." Zhang Yi responded with a faint smile. "Then there's nothing you can do. Wise words can't persuade the destined to die. Just take good care of yourself and those around you." Suddenly, Zhang Yi's tone turned icy. "But let me remind you, I've always treated you like a brother. If you ever decide you don't want to work with me, I won't blame you. The only condition is that you must not betray me." Having experienced Zhang Yi's power and cherishing the limited edition collectibles Zhang Yi had, Chunlei quickly reassured, "Brother Zhang, you can count on me. I know you're the best to me." Zhang Yi originally wanted to call Chunlei to the shelter, but then had a change of heart. "Chunlei, I need more intelligence about West Mountain base. Try to find out as much as you can about the soldiers' movements." Chunlei seemed reluctant. "Undercover work isn't my forte. Those soldiers are intimidating, and I get shaky just looking at them." Zhang Yi was somewhat exasperated. It seems this guy still doesn't realize his own strength. With his ability, he could easily freeze these soldiers in a fraction of a second. Why is he so timid? "Don't worry, I'm not asking you to fight them. Just probe around a bit. If you can get some important information, there'll be a reward for you," Zhang Yi assured. At this, Chunlei's face lit up. "Boss, you can count on me. I'll handle it perfectly." Meanwhile, in Su East Village, the village chief was busy attending to the soldiers, arranging accommodations and asking every household to contribute food and drink for them. When Chunlei approached the village chief from behind and called out to him, the chief turned around and scolded, "Didn't I tell you to hide at home and not come out? If the soldiers find out you're a mutant, they might take you away. What would happen to our village then?" Chunlei responded with a smile, "The fact that I'm a mutant will come out sooner or later. Even if our villagers keep quiet, can you be sure people from the neighboring village won't talk? They'll think you're hiding something and become wary of you. It's better to admit it now and use this opportunity to get closer to them." The village chief of Su East Village, after some thought, found Chunlei's suggestion reasonable. He then brought Chunlei to Shenhong and the others. "Gentlemen, this is my grandson, Su Chunlei. He's a mutant." Hearing that Chunlei was a mutant, everyone looked at him in surprise. Shenhong approached and asked, "You don't look like a mutant. What's your ability?" To gain the soldiers' trust, Chunlei replied, "See these snow houses? I built them all by myself." He then demonstrated his ability. With a slight lift of his right hand, a snowball rose into the air. The onlookers widened their eyes in amazement, dispelling any doubts. Shin Hong, excited, draped an arm around Chun Lei's shoulder and exclaimed, "Brother, you're amazing. I had no idea such a small village could harbor such talent." Discovering a mutant was a significant achievement. A natural mutant like Chun Lei could hold a high position in West Mountain Base's special forces. Everyone hoped to build a good relationship with their potential future leader. Feeling elated, Chun Lei turned to the village chief and said, "Little Su, prepare more food and drinks. I want to have a good time with the soldiers." During the feast, Chun Lei gathered crucial intelligence and immediately called Zhang Yi. West Mountain Base has assembled a group of terrifyingly powerful mutant captains, ready to attack your shelter at any moment. They've brought a large amount of explosives for targeted demolition. After learning the details from Chun Lei, Zhang Yi had newfound respect for him and expressed his concern. "Thanks to your information, you can come and pick up your figurines anytime." Then, with a hint of playfulness, Zhang Yi asked, "Fatso, haven't you ever thought about joining West Mountain Base? Following me might not be the best path." Chun Lei smiled openly. "Brother Zhang, my heart has always been with you. I trust my instincts." As a sensitive anime fan, Chun Lei could sense the soldiers' ill intentions, especially in the way they looked at the villagers, as if they were livestock. He couldn't imagine being part of such a group. While Zhang Yi might not be a gentleman, Chun Lei saw him as a person of genuine character. Zhang Yi assured him firmly, "You will never regret your choice today. Keep an eye on their movements and contact me with any updates." Zhang Yi, deep in thought about countermeasures, contemplated the challenge of dealing with explosives. The main issue is handling the bombing. The stockpile of explosives at West Mountain Base could easily level 10 shelters like mine, but to place the explosives, they have to get close to the shelter first. That's when I'll take them down. He wasn't overly worried. After all, this was his home turf. Even if he couldn't hold the upper 2 floors, he could retreat to the underground levels. The true essence of the shelter lay in its 3 subterranean floors, impervious even to missiles. After summoning the women in the shelter and briefing them about the situation, he arranged for them to move underground. The women were understandably nervous, but Zhang Yi reassured them, "Don't worry at all. I've already assessed the strength of West Mountain Base. They can't threaten our safety." After delegating tasks, Zhang Yi went to the control room to check in with Yang Xinshin. "Xinshin, how's the task I assigned you coming along?" Yang Xinshin looked somewhat dejected. "I've been trying to hack into West Mountain Base's network these past few days, but I failed. It's not that my skills are lacking, but their internal network is a local area network. It's impossible to invade without accessing their internal network, and with the current network media in a paralyzed state, it's like trying to cook a meal without rice." Zhang Yi wasn't surprised by this outcome and consoled her. "I don't blame you. As long as we maintain our own security and prevent invasions, that's enough. If we can counter-infiltrate, great. If not, it's no big deal." Then, Zhang Yi visited Liu Karen's workshop and asked her seriously, "If you were a demolition expert at West Mountain Base, how would you deal with this shelter?" Liu Karen answered without hesitation, "For buildings, it's common to use TNT explosives with detonators, especially for dealing with old structures." Zhang Yi then inquired, "How much explosives do you think would be needed to blow a big hole in our shelter, considering its sturdiness?" Liu Karen scratched her head. "I don't have an exact concept of the shelter's strength, but based on the materials and thickness, at least 500 kilograms of explosives would be required." Zhang Yi pondered. "Such a large quantity would be a very obvious target when being transported. Couldn't I just detonate them prematurely with a sniper rifle?" However, Liu Karen shook her head. "That's unlikely to work. TNT is highly stable. It can't be detonated by bullets or even direct burning. It must be detonated using a detonator." Zhang Yi thought for a moment. "In that case, it seems I'll have to implement the second plan. How did the task I gave you last time turn out?" Liu Karen presented a bomb with a detonator. "This wasn't difficult for me. The scope is also ready. The hardest part was this," she said, pulling out a set of combat gear from the cabinet. She had put a lot of thought into making it, using the latest technological materials Zhang Yi had provided. It was so sturdy that it could resist most sniper rifle bullets. What puzzled her was, why did you want it made in the style of those soldiers' uniforms? Are you planning to infiltrate West Mountain Base? This is crucial. You'll understand when the time comes. Meanwhile, at West Mountain Base, a top-tier team was quickly assembled and set off towards Su Family Town. Shin Hong and others had been waiting at the village entrance for some time. This mission was also voluntarily joined by Liang Yu, not to combat Zhang Yi, but to prepare for leading her students to escape later. Upon seeing Battalion Commander Ling Feng, Shin Hong hurriedly confessed their failure. They had set out as a rescue team, but had ended up losing 12 soldiers without saving anyone. But Ling Feng didn't seem to blame them. This was an organizational misjudgment, underestimating the opponent's strength. "You need not be too hard on yourselves." Then Ling Feng's gaze suddenly turned cold, and he spoke with clenched teeth. "The person who killed my brothers, I'll tear him to pieces." Confidently looking at the powerful lineup behind the captain, Shin Hong believed, this time, even if Zhang Yi is incredibly strong, he's going to suffer. Ling Feng then pointed at Chun Lei. "Who is this guy?" Shin Hong quickly introduced confused him. This is a natural mutant I found after much effort. He can control ice and snow, a man of limitless potential. Liang Yu, standing behind Ling Feng, recognized Chun Lei immediately. Isn't he the mutant who helped Zhang Yi take Yang Xinxin away last time? However, she chose not to reveal his identity, as her current priority was to escape from West Mountain Base with her students. Ling Feng scrutinized Chun Lei. You can control ice and snow? Chun Lei nodded nervously. Yes, all these ice houses in the village were built by me. Ling Feng patted Chun Lei's shoulder. After this operation, I'll recommend you to the higher-ups. You might even get a chance to be a team leader. Then Ling Feng started to deploy the operation. Based on the information we have, the enemy has very accurate marksmanship. Therefore, when the mine clearing and explosives placement team is in action, we must use smoke grenades to obscure his line of sight. As for his ability to ignore bullet attacks, our goal is to blow open the shelter, not to engage him directly. Meanwhile, inside the shelter, Zhang Yi was calmly reading a paperback book. Upon seeing the thick smoke outside through the surveillance system, he closed the book and put on the special combat suit made by Liu Karen. Zhang Yi told the women, stay in the basement and don't come up. What follows is a battle between men. Standing on the second floor balcony, Zhang Yi looked out at the dense smoke and mused. Seems like they're scared of my sniping, but this is indeed a good strategy. Zhang Yi appeared confident, a meaningful smile creeping across his lips. So, it seems they are about to proceed with the demolition of the shelter. Ling Feng first arranged for the bomb disposal personnel to dismantle the traps around the villa. Their method was straightforward and brutal, not meticulously disarming each trap, but rather using their own explosives for a saturation detonation. Zhang Yi couldn't help but admire their proficiency. They really know what they're doing. As the traps were cleared by the explosion, Ling Feng signaled, demolition team, move in. Everyone else, be ready to cover them. The bomb squad, each carrying heavy explosives, methodically placed them beneath the walls of the shelter. From inside, Zhang Yi watched their every move. Just place them and leave, like a delivery? Makes sense. They have to get to a safe distance to detonate them remotely. They can't risk being blown up. Looks like I overestimated them. They don't understand my abilities. Soon, Ling Feng received a signal on his radio. All bomb squad members have reached a safe distance, ready to detonate. Ling Feng's lips curled into a smile. Seems Zhang Yi isn't as capable as we thought. I was prepared for a tough fight during the explosive setup, maybe even losing some men, but this was easy. He pressed the detonation button, and everyone braced for the explosion. But after a few seconds, the sound and fury of the explosion seemed to disappear in a fraction of a second. A scout checked through binoculars, and his eyes widened in shock. The mountain of explosives disappeared in an instant, and the blast and flames seemed to be sucked away. There's only minimal damage to the wall. Ling Feng stamped his foot in frustration. This is unbelievable. Were the explosives devoured? Liang Yu's eyes sparkled with a strange light, thinking, Zhang Yi has such power. I need to find a way to cooperate with him. After pondering for a moment, Ling Feng tentatively concluded that Zhang Yi's ability was related to space. Remote bombing wouldn't work. Any amount of explosives sent would be instantly removed. Realizing the difficulty of the situation, Ling Feng still believed Zhang Yi's defensive abilities are extraordinary, suggesting he might not be strong in offense. The 4 team leaders with us are mutants, and based on their awakening methods, it's unlikely one person's ability covers both offense and defense. So, we don't need to rush. We'll leave some people to watch the shelter, making sure no one inside escapes, and go back to the base to devise a strategy. In the shelter at this time, Zhang Yi also arrived in the basement. Shokir hurried over to inquire about the situation. What was that tremor just now? It felt like the sky was about to collapse. Zhang Yi comforted her, saying, you don't need to worry. Even if they breach the first 2 levels of our shelter, they can't threaten the 3 underground levels. In this billion-dollar shelter, I bet 800 million is spent on the underground part alone. Recalling the scene of the recently detonated explosives being absorbed into a different space, Zhang Yi muttered to himself, I want to see how much more explosives they can bring to me for free. Several women, looking panicked, gathered around to ask about the situation. Zhang Yi reassured them with a smile. You don't need to be too worried. The explosives they brought this time are already used up. We are temporarily safe. It will take time for them to go back and get more explosives. The West Mountain base is more than 50 kilometers from here. Even if they go back immediately to resupply, it will take them at least half a day to return, and I've already thought of a strategy to deal with them. Then, Zhang Yi went to the living room. While monitoring the outside situation, he asked Yang Mi to prepare food to replenish energy, as the primary source of energy for his special abilities was food. At this moment, Chun Lei suddenly sent a message. Brother Zhang, the noise from your place scared me to death. I thought your villa area had been leveled. Now, many soldiers have returned to our village, and some have gone west. Zhang Yi immediately understood that they had indeed gone back for more explosives. What are the remaining people doing? Chun Lei complained. What else can they do? As soon as they came back, they started demanding food and drink, acting like lords. Zhang Yi couldn't help but worry about Chun Lei. He clearly understands that if this shelter can't be taken down soon, the worst affected will definitely be Su Family Town. It will surely become a base for the West Mountain base, and all the people in Su Family Town town will have to serve them. Immediately, Zhang Yi reminded Chun-Lei, "You must always be cautious of these soldiers. If there's any danger, come to me at any time. Your brother will protect you." Chun-Lei was deeply moved and said, "Thank you, Brother Zhang. If things really come to that point, I will definitely come to you." After hanging up the phone, Zhang Yi pondered. He knew that a conflict between the West Mountain Base and Su family town was inevitable. However, Zhang Yi didn't sympathize with them. Instead, he hoped they would break ties sooner. Meanwhile, Ling Feng returned to the base with his men to transport explosives. Captain Shi Daong and most of his men stayed in Su family town. He summoned the village head of Su East Village and Chun-Lei. "We plan to stay in the village for a while. You need to make room for us to stay, and remember to prepare meals for 65 people every day." The village head still didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation and agreed obsequiously. Chun-Lei felt a pang of concern. These soldiers eat so much. One can eat the portion of 5. If this continues, the village will eventually be drained. The village head of Su East Village was still fantasizing that the soldiers would only stay for a few days and leave after dealing with Zhang Yi. Anticipating a great reward afterward, he carelessly asked, "When will you be able to subdue that murderer Zhang Yi?" Upon hearing this, Shi Daong's eyes turned cold. "Don't ask what you shouldn't. Just take care of our food and lodging." Shi Daong's voice and physique were very imposing. The village head had no choice but to bow repeatedly in agreement. After Shi Daong left, the village head straightened up and commanded Chun-Lei in a stern tone, "Hurry up and build more ice houses for the important guests to live in. Remember, put extra effort into it." Chun-Lei remained silent in response to the village head's command. He knew very well that in the eyes of the villagers, no matter how strong he was just seen as a useless deadbeat. The next day, Ling Feng brought a large amount of explosives. Shi Daong, transformed into a giant ape along with many soldiers, arrived at a reverse slope. Then, Ling Feng and he, working together, hurled a massive bundle of explosives towards the shelter. Watching the flying explosives, Zhang Yi shouted dramatically, "Dimensional gate." Suddenly, a huge gate appeared above the shelter, and a surge of energy poured out. The explosives, which were supposed to hit the shelter, were instantly reflected back, almost along the same path. Ling Feng and his men were caught off guard, instinctively shouting, "Take cover." Everyone immediately hit the ground. Ling Feng was stunned. The TNT, as expected, was stable enough not to explode upon impact, but rather after the countdown of the detonator ended. A huge explosion formed a mushroom cloud, engulfing many soldiers in a fiery wave, even throwing those hundreds of meters away. Watching this scene, akin to a bonfire feast, absorbing and then releasing the explosive energy was initially just a bold experiment for Zhang Yi, but its success meant that he could continue using this method against them. Meanwhile, Ling Feng and his group were lucky that Jin Shuorong had timely created an ice barrier, which blocked most of the explosive impact. Ling Feng stood up disheveled, looking at the scene in front of him. The entire hill had been turned into a deep pit, with many Special Forces members burned to ashes. These were Ling Feng's brothers in arms, who had survived the apocalypse, but in a blink of an eye, they turned into black ash. He thought, anguished. Ling Feng pounded the ground in a rage, the atmosphere on the scene oppressively heavy. His look was more terrifying than an injured wild animal, yet he also tried to stay calm, analyzing what had just happened. He soon guessed the process. Could it be that he used the explosive energy absorbed yesterday and released it, reflecting the thrown explosives back at us? While still pondering, suddenly a bullet mixed with special abilities was shot towards Ling Feng. With a sharp twist of his head, Ling Feng narrowly avoided the bullet, which whizzed past his ear. Turning towards the shelter, their eyes met, causing Zhang Yi's pupils to contract. That fierce look sends chills down the spine, truly befitting their leader. "It's a pity I didn't take him out." At that moment, Ling Feng felt a sense of alarm. As a soldier, he never expected Zhang Yi's sniper rifle to be effective over 2 kilometers away while still maintaining such lethal force. Ling Feng immediately warned everyone to take cover. However, Shi Daong, not being an agile mutant, was shot in the forehead. Yet, he didn't fall. He simply removed the bullet from his forehead with his bare hands, cursing and glaring in the direction of Zhang Yi. This shocked Zhang Yi. Such defense, comparable to a tank. I wonder if he's even stronger than Uncle Yu. All the leaders from the West Mountain Base are tough nuts to crack. As Zhang Yi was about to take aim again, those few disappeared from his view. Simultaneously, 2 sharp bullets flew towards him. Zhang Yi quickly opened the dimensional gate, absorbing the bullets into a different space, and scoffed, "Trying to sneak attack me with a sniper shot?" Zhang Yi immediately reversed the direction of the bullets and sent them back along their original path. The 2 snipers from the base, among their top tier, would never know that the bullets that killed them were the very ones they had fired. While Zhang Yi was still searching for targets, a cloud of dust suddenly rose in the distance, as if something was charging towards him at a speed even his eyes couldn't track. Before he could react, a loud bang came from below, and the entire shelter felt a strong vibration. The self-check system immediately sent an alarm. Shelter impacted, wall damage at 0.03%. Zhang Yi was startled. When did he get here? If he hits the shelter with thousands of punches like that, it's going to be the end of this place. Ling Ling Feng stared back at Zhang Yi with icy eyes. You coward, come out and fight me one-on-one. Zhang Yi inwardly sighed, realizing it seems that conventional strength is hardly enough to harm him, but as long as I stay in the shelter, he can't do anything to me. The frustrated West Mountain base team had no choice but to return to Su Family Town. The village head of Su East Village greeted them with an obsequious smile. Captain Ling, you must have won a great victory today. Has that demon Zhang Yi been killed? The villagers nearby also looked excited. That huge explosion just now must have blown Zhang Yi to ashes. Captain Ling is truly formidable. The mood of the West Mountain base team was already at its lowest after their failed mission, and the villagers' flattery felt more like mockery. Shi Daon coldly ordered, "Shut up, all of you." It was then that the village head realized the soldiers' demeanor did not resemble that of victors. Ling Feng then approached and said, "Go and prepare more food for us. We expended a lot of energy today." After saying this, he headed towards the temporary housing. That forceful punch Ling Feng had thrown had consumed nearly half of his strength. Shi Daon didn't forget to turn back threateningly to remind the village head, "Remember, my portion should be the largest." The villagers dared not disobey, continually nodding in agreement. Once the soldiers were out of earshot, the villagers couldn't help but murmur among themselves, "It seems they failed today. So many people and they still couldn't handle one Zhang Yi. It's quite embarrassing." Although the villagers spoke softly, their words were overheard by the mutants with their exceptional hearing. Shi Daon even suggested teaching the villagers a lesson, but Ling Feng stopped him. "They still have some value, providing us with food and shelter. If we need to deal with them, we can do it after handling Zhang Yi. Then we can take them all to the base to pedal bicycles for electricity." Meanwhile, after the soldiers from the West Mountain base had retreated, Zhang Yi returned to the underground shelter. Shokir rushed over, anxiously asking, "Brother Zhang, are you alright?" Zhang Yi replied with a smile, "The ones who aren't alright are them." Yang Mi considerately prepared some food and brought it over. While eating, Zhang Yi asked Lu Karen, "If the wall is somewhat damaged, will it be difficult to repair?" Lu Karen pondered and said, "I've studied the alloy used in the shelter's walls. We just need some special materials. Even if I can get the materials we need, repairing the wall would require going outside. But it's not possible to go out now, right?" Zhang Yi replied with a smile, "I just need to know it can be repaired. There's no rush for this. I have plenty of time." Yang Mi looked worried. "I wonder how long this battle will last." Zhang Yi handed her a beer. "Don't worry, my favorite thing is to fight a war of attrition." Seeing this, the other girls came over to ask for beer too, lightening the atmosphere. After repelling the West Mountain base, Zhang Yi resumed his shameless way of life. However, a sudden phone call broke the tranquility. Yang Xinxin picked up the phone and turned pale. How could it be her? As a top hacker, she wasn't worried about someone hacking her phone. She sensibly handed the phone to Zhang Yi. It was a message from someone named Liang Yu, saying she and her classmates needed help and hoped Yang Xinxin could connect her with Zhang Yi. Upon seeing the name Liang Yu, Zhang Yi thought of the mutant from the Azure Sky Academy who wielded a long sword. Could she have joined the West Mountain base too? I still remember that swordswoman with her fierce swordsmanship. Even struggling with hunger for so long, she could fight evenly with Flower. If she's at her full strength, her power must be even more terrifying. Zhang Yi became alert and asked Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen earnestly, "Tell me about this teacher Liang." They both looked grateful and said, "Although she has a stubborn and pure character, Teacher Liang is undoubtedly a good person. She could have easily survived on her own, yet she chose to risk her life protecting us, who were nothing but burdens to her." Zhang Yi pondered, if she's endured the brutal trials of the apocalypse, that's enough to prove her character. But now that she's joined the West Mountain base, I still have to be cautious. He then asked Yang Xinxin, by sending messages through the phone, "Is there a risk of our shelter's network being compromised by a virus?" Yang Xinxin confidently crossed her arms and reassured, "Brother, don't worry. I've told you before, the defense level of my phone is not inferior to the supercomputer in the control room. It's impossible for anyone to hack into it." Zhang Yi nodded awkwardly and sent a message to Liang Yu. "I am Zhang Yi. What do you want to talk about?" As a female captain-level mutant, Liang Yu had her own independent ice house. Receiving Zhang Yi's reply, she immediately called him. "Zhang Yi, I'm here to discuss a cooperation. My students are in danger at the West Mountain base, and I need your help." Zhang Yi replied sarcastically, "Don't joke with me. What kind of danger could there be in a shelter like the West Mountain base? Besides, aren't those students all from privileged backgrounds?" Liang Yu sounded a bit embarrassed. "I'm not joking. Their previous status and positions are worthless now. I'm sincerely seeking cooperation. I was part of the team that came to attack your shelter, and as a new captain, I might be able to assist you. But first, you need to agree to help my students escape from the West Mountain base." Zhang Yi was puzzled. Isn't the West Mountain base a large shelter? How could there be life-threatening danger there? And with Liang Yu's strength, how could she not protect a group of students? Zhang Yi was well aware that while he could ensure his own safety, launching an offensive against the West Mountain base was out of the question. He didn't immediately agree to Liang Yu's conditions. Instead, he asked her for all the information she had about the West Mountain base. To show her sincerity, Liang Yu shared all the information she knew with Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi quickly grasped the key point. So the West Mountain base is indeed indeed conducting experiments on artificial mutations, albeit with a very low success rate so far. Shokir, looking horrified, said, "The West Mountain base is like a living hell. If the people from the fourth life pod are turned into protein solution, who will generate electricity for them?" Zhang Yi chuckled dismissively. "There are still quite a few people alive. Even if only 5% of the population survived, that's still a significant number. Look at Su Family Town across the river. There are thousands of survivors there, but I guess they'll eventually be captured for experiments, experiencing cycling for electricity and artificial mutations." Lu Karen, ever innocent, was worried about her classmates. "When I heard they went to the West Mountain base, I was happy for them, but the more I hear, the scarier it gets. If I had known this, it would have been better to stay at Azure Sky Academy." Now Zhang Yi understood why Liang Yu was seeking his help. However, he told her, "The West Mountain base is too heavily guarded. With my abilities alone, it's impossible to rescue those privileged students. My power is for self-defense. Expecting me to go out and save people is overestimating my abilities." Although Liang Yu was somewhat disappointed, Zhang Yi's response was within her expectations. She understood the principle of mutual exchange. "If I can offer you something valuable enough, would you take the risk for us?" Zhang Yi chuckled lightly. "Whether I'm willing to act depends on the value of what you offer. Contact me again when you have something worthwhile." He then ended the call. Turning to Yan Xinshin, he said, "You mentioned before that if we plant a Trojan horse into the West Mountain base's network, we could completely infiltrate their system, right? It seems like a good opportunity is presenting itself." In Su Family Town, Ling Feng, having been repelled, gathered his most trusted subordinates in his room that night to discuss strategies against Zhang Yi. Ling Feng shared his insights. "Although our previous attacks failed, we've more or less figured out what Zhang Yi's special abilities are. Conventional weapons are no use. They just get absorbed and reflected back. Fortunately, his offensive means are limited. He doesn't dare leave the shelter and can only threaten us with sniping. There are blind spots in his shelter's defenses. Not every angle is covered by windows. So, I plan for us mutants to take turns attacking these blind spots, while having the villagers of Su Family Town dig tunnels for underground blasting. Our surface attacks are just a diversion to draw Zhang Yi's attention. Our real goal is to dig through the tunnels and blast from below." Liang Yu was horrified at Ling Feng's plan. "You're making the villagers of Su Family Town do hard labor in these extreme cold conditions. This intense work will surely lead to many of them freezing or working to death. You're sending them to their deaths." Ling Feng responded coldly, "I don't care about their lives. Zhang Yi has already killed hundreds of their villagers. Without us, they stand even less chance against Zhang Yi. Some sacrifices are necessary for final victory. Military discipline is about following orders. We must use every means necessary to take down Zhang Yi's shelter." Liang Yu clenched her fists in anger, shaking with emotion. "But those are innocent villagers. I'm not a soldier. I can't do this." Ling Feng stared intensely at Liang Yu. "The moment you joined the special forces, you became one. Unless you have a better strategy, you must follow orders." Xing Shuerong, sensing the tense atmosphere, quickly chimed in, "This is a desperate measure. Zhang Yi has a lot of resources crucial for the West Mountain base. In these apocalyptic times, we can't afford to show mercy to others. Protecting ourselves and those close to us is already a challenge, like your students, for instance." Liang Yu calmed down when her students were mentioned. Her sense of justice made it hard for her to tolerate such actions, but she knew well that she was no match for Ling Feng. Confronting them directly would not only be suicidal, but also endanger her students. Xing Shuerong continued, "Digging tunnels is not the same as being cannon fodder. They're used to farming. This shouldn't be too hard for them." Liang Yu stood up, somewhat helplessly. "You arrange it, but I hope you can prioritize human life and try to avoid casualties among the villagers." After a whole night of discussion, they formulated a battle plan. Ling Feng called the village head to gather everyone in the village. Dozens of soldiers, armed with rifles, looked at the villagers as if they were prisoners. Ling Feng picked up a megaphone and shouted, "The murderer Zhang Yi across the river. We have invested a lot of manpower and resources, but this man is extremely cunning and deceitful. Now we need the cooperation of the villagers to dig tunnels and eradicate Zhang Yi, that demon." The villagers were not convinced and whispered angrily, "They eat our food, drink our water, and now they want us to do hard labor. This is outrageous." The village head tried to pacify them. "Everyone, calm down. The organization is thinking of our village's long-term peace." The villagers were confused. "We've been living in peace with Zhang Yi. It was us who attacked him first, and he just retaliated." They grumbled in discontent. Liang Yu watched this scene with a sigh, thinking Ling Feng's decision could lead to the deaths of many innocent villagers. Upon receiving Liang Yu's intelligence, Zhang Yi was slightly startled. "I hadn't considered an underground blast, but given the lack of digging equipment and the extreme cold weather, the progress of such a project would undoubtedly be very slow. I don't need to worry about it in the short term." Zhang Yi had already devised a counter-strategy. He decided to play along with their plan, letting them dig the tunnel. When they were close to completion, he would destroy the tunnel, enjoying the look of surprise on their faces. Liang Yu, however, was anxious upon hearing this, but this way, it will be the villagers who will suffer. After After all, the people from West Mountain Base are just supervising. Zhang Yi dismissed this concern and swiftly changed the subject, asking Liang Yu, which room are you staying in? Liang Yu was puzzled. Are you planning to come and find me? Zhang Yi smiled mysteriously. This is key to whether you and your students can escape. Liang Yu then described her location relative to Chun Lei's lavish castle. The next day, everyone moved according to the plan to attack the shelter. Zhang Yi watched this with a sense of irony. Beside him, Zhou Qi and Yang Mi were attentively serving him. One peeled seeds while the other brought water. Their competitive behavior made Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen feel envious. Lu Karen broke the awkward silence. This Ling Feng is quite formidable. His attacks are beyond ordinary weapons. Zhang Yi joked, they are the top forces of West Mountain Base, so it's not surprising. He then playfully added, look at the dangerous world outside, while we can eat and stay warm inside. You must cherish this. The implication was clear. They should show their gratitude. The women nodded in agreement, aware that all this was thanks to Zhang Yi. Yang Mi expressed her concerns. Although we know their plan, staying inside all the time isn't a long-term solution. We can't know the progress of their work. Zhang Yi looked towards Yang Xinxin. Explain it to your sister, will you? Yang Xinxin looked at Yang Mi as if she were looking at a fool, proudly explaining, sound travels faster in solids than in air, and being in the basement, we can feel it more clearly. With a sound wave receiver, I can precisely analyze their construction distance through the computer. Your brain probably can't understand this. Yang Mi seemed to have an epiphany. So, we don't have to do anything. Just wait. Zhang Yi nodded with a smile. They are all working in vain. We just need to rest and conserve our strength, enjoying their performance. After several hours of assault, Ling Feng and his team decided to take a brief rest. They walked back, stopping by the digging site to check on the progress. The tunnel was filled with shouts and cries of distress. Soon, a man was carried out on a stretcher. After a quick examination, the military medic shook his head. It's an acute myocardial infarction. It's unlikely he'll survive. At this, a young man couldn't hold back his anger. He threw down his shovel and yelled furiously, you're inhuman, treating us like animals. I won't do this anymore. The overseer, Shin Hong, gripping his AK, coldly replied, we're doing this for your revenge. He then aimed his gun at the villager. We've come this far. If you dare disobey orders, you'll be treated as a deserter. Liang Yu, in a state of urgency, called Zhang Yi. At this rate, at least 100 villagers will die. Can't you think of something to minimize the casualties of these innocent people? Zhang Yi, calm and collected, smiled. This is all within my expectations, but I've noticed that fewer special forces soldiers have been attacking the shelter these past few days. Where have the others gone? Do they have another mission? Liang Yu answered. With the increasing number of villager casualties, the mood has become very tense. So, Ling Feng has left some men in the town to maintain order. She laughed nervously. They say it's to keep order, but it's really just to suppress any potential uprising. After the call, Zhang Yi had a new plan in mind. It's been days since our last confrontation. Ling Feng and his team must have let their guard down. If I don't shake them up a bit, they might think I'm just hiding in the shelter, waiting to be captured. It seems a little shock is in order for them. The next day, Zhang Yi donned a special combat suit made by Lu Karen, preparing to take Flower out for a spin. The shelter had an emergency exit known only to Zhang Yi, leading to a 3-kilometer-long underground tunnel that ended at a tombstone in the hills behind a public cemetery. Even Zhang Yi had not expected that Wang Siming would create an emergency exit in a cemetery. Taking a snowmobile from his different space, Zhang Yi headed straight to Su Family Town. The guards at the village entrance quickly spotted Zhang Yi's figure. Assuming he was a returning frontline captain due to the captain's armband on his combat suit, he saluted him. Before he could react, Zhang Yi swiftly took him out with his knife, eliminating all the guards silently and storing their bodies in his different space. Although Zhang Yi and Flower were capable of overpowering them, he preferred not to make too much noise. However, the scent of blood alerted the military dogs, which began barking furiously. The well-trained dogs would not bark without reason. Sensing danger, the Special Forces team rushed outside. Upon seeing Zhang Yi skulking about, they opened fire, but to their horror, their bullets seemed to be sucked into a strange vortex. Zhang Yi, wielding the dragon's roar, went on a frenzied spree of slashing and hacking. The scene instantly turned chaotic with limbs and severed arms flying about. The commotion quickly alerted Ling Feng. Meanwhile, the villagers at the construction site heard the gunfire. Is someone setting off fireworks? Ling Feng, hearing the gunfire, immediately turned serious and ordered, let's go back and investigate. By this time, Zhang Yi had already taken Chun Lei and made their escape, but Chun Lei expressed concern. Brother Zhang, our snowmobile tracks are too obvious. Won't your emergency exit be exposed? Zhang Yi was unfazed, confidently storing the snowmobile and saying, anyone with a brain could eventually find this place. It was bound to be exposed sooner or later, but I'm not worried about it. A meaningful smile played on Zhang Yi's lips. I'm actually looking forward to them coming after me. Back in the village, Ling Feng, seeing the bodies of his special forces soldiers scattered everywhere, was infuriated. He had thought his strategy of openly attacking while secretly digging a tunnel was foolproof, but instead, his base had been infiltrated. He realized there must be a traitor in his ranks, or else Zhang Yi wouldn't have dared to leave the shelter. Xing Shuerong was suspicious. I've had people watching the shelter around the clock. Not even a fly could escape without our knowledge. Could there be another exit? Shi Daong, pounding his chest in frustration, speculated. There must be. Our West Mountain base has several emergency exits. It must be an inside job. Someone leaked our operation timings, allowing him to attack our base fearlessly. Ling Feng's eyes lit up. Indeed, the West Mountain base has a few emergency exits, and I've heard Xinxian has a private one. A shelter of Zhang Yi's level wouldn't just have one exit. If that's the case, our tunnel digging plan must also be compromised. Continuing the excavation is pointless now. At that moment, a soldier hurried over. Captain Ling, during the villager head count, we found that the local mutant Su Chunlei is missing, and there's no sign of his body. Also, Captain Liang Yu hasn't returned to the unit. Hearing this, Ling Feng was even more furious. Gritting his teeth, he said, "It seems we have more than one traitor." He decided to immediately set off, following the tracks of the snowmobile. The village head, at a loss, lamented, "So many villagers died digging that tunnel, and now you tell me it was all for nothing. How am I supposed to explain this to everyone?" Chunlei, entering the shelter, was almost overwhelmed by the sight before him. Zhang Yi had prepared a room full of figurines, tapes, and pillows for him. Zhang Yi told Chunlei, "From now on, you'll live here." Chunlei, overjoyed, jumped onto the bed and hugged the pillow tightly. "From now on, I, Su Chunlei, am willing to go through fire and water for brother Zhang, never shirking even in the face of death." Then, Zhang Yi went to the control room. With the information provided by Liang Yu and the equipment at hand, Yang Xinxin quickly hacked into the West Mountain Base's network. She confidently informed Zhang Yi, "Now I can paralyze the West Mountain Base's network at any time and cut off the communication between the dispatched troops and their base." Zhang Yi patted Yang Xinxin on the head in praise. "Well done. Once we deal with West Mountain Base's top forces, the threat we face will diminish significantly." He then addressed Liang Yu, "As long as you provide me with enough value, I will naturally fulfill my promise to you. But before that, you still need to work for the safety of your students." At that moment, the monitor showed Ling Feng and his team had found the emergency exit. Zhang Yi smiled devilishly. "Just watch. The show is about to begin." Meanwhile, Ling Feng and his team followed the snowmobile tracks, which eventually led them to a cemetery and then disappeared. Judging by the distance to the shelter, they concluded that this was undoubtedly the emergency exit. Shi Daong was furious. "After killing so many of our brothers, I'll tear Zhang Yi apart when we catch him." Suddenly, a soldier pointed into the distance, shouting, "Zhang Yi is over there." Shi Daong didn't hesitate and lunged forward, shouting, "Zhang Yi, you scoundrel, I'll tear you into 1,000 pieces." Xing Shuerong quickly tried to stop him, saying, "Shi Daong, don't be impulsive, come back." By this time, Shi Daong had transformed into an ape-man, swearing to make Zhang Yi pay with blood. Zhang Yi, however, was not the least bit panicked. Dealing with this kind of brave but reckless man, Zhang Yi was confident. He raised his sniper rifle and fired 3 shots. At such a distance, Zhang Yi would never miss, but he deliberately aimed off to lure Shi Daong closer to the trap he had set. Just as Shi Daong was about to reach him, Zhang Yi swiftly stepped on the detonator he had buried earlier. Instantly, a snowstorm several dozen meters high erupted, blocking his vision. At this moment, Xing Shuerong, Ling Feng, and others also caught up. Meanwhile, Liang Yu, wielding the dragon's roar, stood in front of them with Flower by her side. Ling Feng angrily accused Liang Yu, "How dare you betray the base? Don't you want to save your students?" Liang Yu didn't want to waste words with them. Most of her students had died in their human experiments, and she had long hated the base to the core. She shouted, "Our paths are different. We cannot plan together. I have nothing to say to you." With that, she swung her knife at Ling Feng. Flower, behind her, suddenly pounced at Xing Shuerong. Xing Shuerong's skills were mainly defensive. She intended to block Flower's attack with an ice wall, but she clearly underestimated the power of Flower's claws. In an instant, she was killed. Ling Feng, in disbelief, looked back to see Xing Shuerong lying in a pool of blood. While Ling Feng was skillfully dodging Liang Yu's dragon's roar, a huge explosion suddenly occurred behind him. When the dust settled, Shi Daong was seen covered in nails, lying on the ground, having lost his ability to fight. Shi Daong looked helplessly at Ling Feng, but it was too late. Zhang Yi, carrying the sniper rifle, fired another shot, eliminating any chance of Shi Daong getting up again. As he fired, Zhang Yi shouted, "Chunlei, it's your turn now." Chunlei appeared behind them, seemingly out of nowhere. With both hands charged, he immediately sealed off the retreat of the remaining Special Forces soldiers. At this moment, Liang Yu didn't linger in her fight with Ling Feng. She mounted Flower and took the opportunity to flee the scene, simultaneously pulling Chunlei along with her, escaping at a high speed. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi stood atop a hill, looking down at the Special Forces soldiers trapped in the ice and snow. Ling Feng, with a look of disdain, said to Zhang Yi, "You don't think mere ice and snow can trap me, do you?" Zhang Yi let out a cold laugh. The real show was just beginning. Zhang Yi instantly activated the dimensional gate, releasing all the TNT he had previously stored in a different space. Except for Ling Feng himself, The remaining Special Forces soldiers were all modified beings with Ling Feng's cells transplanted. At the critical moment, Ling Feng ordered everyone to dive into the snow. This move indeed saved them from a lot of impact damage. After the explosion, Ling Feng and his team emerged from the snow in a disheveled state. Before they could recover, a soldier suddenly shouted, "Captain, look up there." By the time Ling Feng looked forward, a massive avalanche was already upon them, leaving no time to react. Everyone was instantly buried under the thick snow. Zhang Yi called Lu Karen and Yang Xinxin in the control room. "Thanks to you two geniuses, I could deal with these scums so easily." As it turned out, Yang Xinxin had used computer modeling to precisely calculate the location of the avalanche, and Lu Karen's explosives were designed with just the right power. Coupled with Zhang Yi's strategy of luring the enemy into a trap, they executed a seamless, perfect coordination, catching their opponents off guard. This is all because they were too foolish and greedy, thinking I was just prey to be hunted. Little did they know that they themselves were the lambs to be slaughtered. Of course, this couldn't have been done without the significant help of Liang Yu and Chun Lei, who helped me lead them step by step into the abyss. Liang Yu began to worry. "I used all my strength against Ling Feng just now and didn't manage to harm him at all. If we can't confirm his death, it will be difficult for me to ensure a safe retreat in another encounter." Zhang Yi, however, was full of confidence. "Don't worry about that." Lu Karen had already placed infrared robots in advance. With the thickness of this avalanche and the temperature dropping to -80 degrees, no matter how skilled he is, he has no room to maneuver. In less than 10 minutes, they will be frozen into ice sculptures. That night, Zhang Yi prepared a lavish dinner to treat everyone. Reflecting on the scenes that had unfolded since the apocalypse, Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel emotional. Everything finally seems to have come to an end. Now, with West Mountain Base losing its top combat power and Yang Xinxin's Trojan horse revealing all the secrets to those at the bottom, they will bring about their own destruction without us having to lift a finger. Shokir also expressed her feelings. "I never imagined so much could happen in just a few months. It all feels like a dream. I'm so lucky to have met you, Brother Zhang." Zhang Yi looked affectionately at Shokir. The only constant in this world is change. Just like the once dominant dinosaurs couldn't escape their fate of extinction, this extreme cold wave was just another evolution in the long river of history. Being one of the few survivors is something we should all be grateful for. Thus, Zhang Yi began a shameless life with 5 women and a chubby man. This manga has reached its conclusion. For updates on whether there will be a sequel, please follow Manga Explained. We'll update as soon as any sequel is released. The mysterious West Mountain Base finally made its move. As Wu Chenyu and others were quietly waiting at the cave entrance, suddenly, a strange noise came from outside, and Wu Chenyu became incredibly excited, scrambling out of the cave entrance while excitedly shouting, "My dad has finally sent someone." The other students also got up and hurriedly followed, as if afraid of being left behind. Liang Yu, with Shin Yaoka's support, also slowly walked out of the snow cave to see a long dog sled just stopping. These dogs were clearly extraordinary, resembling well-trained military dogs. At that moment, Liang Yu immediately noticed something amiss. 7 or 8 soldiers, wearing special uniforms and exuding an exceptionally strong presence, indicating they were seasoned and elite veterans, disembarked. Instead of approaching them directly, the soldiers talked among themselves, eyeing the group of students as if inspecting animals. An excited Wu Chenyu approached and asked, "Did my father send you to pick me up?" One among the crowd lifted his helmet to reveal a somewhat haggard face and excitedly said, "Little Yu, I'm here." Wu Chenyu was initially in disbelief, taking a few seconds to vaguely recognize, "Is this really my dear dad?" It wasn't his fault for not recognizing him immediately. His father, as a top official in Heavenly Sea City, usually had an appearance of prosperity, while this man before him had become almost unrecognizably thin. Wu Chenyu, confused but still overjoyed, embraced his father and said, "Dad, you finally came. Do you know what I've been through these past 2 months?" Expressing some resentment, Wu Chenyu pushed his father away, angrily shouting, "Why didn't you come to pick me up sooner? Do you know I almost died here?" Wu Jiangwo looked cowardly and embarrassed, saying, "Let's not talk about that now. The important thing is you're safe. Let's go home with Dad first." At this moment, a soldier approached with a condescending tone, asking, "We heard your school warehouse has quite a few supplies. Please lead the way. These supplies must be taken back to the base." It was only then that Liang Yu realized something was amiss. These people don't seem like they're here to rescue us. They seem only interested in the supplies. Wu Chenyu, in a feigned diligent manner, said, "There are indeed many supplies under the snow, but there's also a mutated big cat inside. We are no match for it." The soldiers discussed among themselves for a while, and the captain declared, "No big deal about a monster. We have experience dealing with mutated creatures. Just lead the way, and you can leave the rest to us." Wu Chenyu panicked at this. He had no desire to return to that perilous snow cave, certain these soldiers couldn't ensure his safety. Thinking this, Wu Chenyu pointed at Liang Yu and said, "All the supplies for us students were found by teacher Liang. She knows the location of the supplies better." In a bid for his safety, Wu Chenyu did not hesitate to betray Liang Yu. Liang Yu sighed deeply and took the initiative, saying, "I'll lead you there then." Soon, the soldiers followed her towards the cave cave entrance. The anxious students ask, "Can we go back first?" But a soldier coldly rebuked, "Just stay put. Once we find the supplies, arrangements will be made for you." Sensing a subtle shift in the atmosphere, the students grew uneasy. Not long after, sounds echoed from the cave entrance, and a soldier popped his head out, shouting, "You boys, come over and help carry some things." The boys had no choice but to comply. The soldiers then directed the students to load all the found supplies onto the sleds. Some students began to whisper complaints. "Weren't they supposed to rescue us? Why does it feel like we're being used as labor now?" The students, daring not to speak out loud, quietly complained to class leader Wu Qingyu. "Didn't you say your father was a leader? Why are we doing this hard labor?" Wu Qingyu, equally embarrassed, had always bragged about his father being the top person at West Mountain Base. But given the current situation, it seemed his father's position within the West Mountain organization wasn't that high after all. He quietly explained, "It must be due to a shortage of manpower. In an icebound apocalypse, there won't be any extra hands. We can rest once we get to the base." Soon, all the packed supplies were moved onto the sled, and the soldiers quickly set off with the fully loaded sleds, leaving behind two soldiers who waved at Liang Yu and the students, saying, "Let's go." Watching the sleds disappear into the distance, the students were dumbfounded. "Is there no other sled arranged for us? Do we have to walk there?" These were kids used to comfort and luxury. The West Mountain Base was at least a dozen kilometers away. One girl immediately protested, "We've been starving and suffering for so long. How can we possibly walk that far?" Listening to the students' back and forth protests, the two soldiers were filled with scorn. "Shut the hell up." One of the soldiers suddenly bellowed, his military authority and aura of decisiveness instantly subduing the students. "Follow me if you don't want to die, or else crawl back to the cave," he said before turning away impatiently. The other soldier coldly added, "Let me remind you, no matter if you were children of high officials or wealthy tycoons before, it's all worthless now in the apocalypse. If you want to survive, just obey." After dropping a bag of energy bars, he turned and left. Some students were instantly devastated, clearly unable to accept this harsh reality. Liang Yu picked up the energy bars and encouraged, "Let's gather our spirits and follow them. The school's food has been taken away. Staying here means certain death. West Mountain Base is our only hope for survival." Teacher Liang is their moral support. A glimmer of hope began to kindle in everyone's hearts. Thus, the students proceeded, supporting each other, consuming an energy bar when they couldn't go on. 2 hours later, they finally reached the entrance of West Mountain Base, a giant iron door slowly opening. Guided by the two soldiers, the students hurriedly entered, seeing this place as a safe haven and a hope for a better life. Descending along the staircase, Liang Yu and the others didn't know how long they walked until they reached a spacious room, much warmer than outside. Both excited and scared, the students wondered, "What are we going to do next?" Liang Yu reassured them, "Don't worry, they wouldn't have brought us all the way here to harm us." Just then, a door opened, and a group of people in protective suits, carrying devices resembling pesticide sprayers, emerged and began to spray the students vigorously. Following them, a formidable middle-aged woman stepped forward, cleared her throat, and commanded loudly, "Everyone, line up. We are disinfecting you as a precaution. A full body check will follow. For the safety of everyone in the base, please cooperate fully." Following that, two medical staff arrived at the scene. Under the orders of the stout woman, everyone had their blood samples taken for testing. Then, under the guidance of the soldiers, they were led into a room. After the arduous trek through miles of snow, everyone was exhausted. The soldiers, menacing with their weapons, commanded obedience without question, and no one had the energy or courage to speak up. Liang Yu and the students found themselves confined in a spacious room. Soon, a person in protective clothing brought in a large basin of food. The students exchanged wary glances. "This white, viscous liquid, what is it? It smells decent though." Driven by hunger, they grabbed spoons and began to eat ravenously. "It tastes a bit like yogurt, but it's definitely not yogurt." Just as they had replenished some of their strength, the door suddenly opened, and Wu Jiangwo, accompanied by the stout woman, entered. Wu Qingyu, upon seeing his father, excitedly called out to him. The stout woman glanced at Wu Qingyu, a sinister smile crossing her face. She turned to Wu Jiangwo and remarked, "Is this young fellow your son? He looks robust." Wu Jiangwo replied obsequiously, "Yes, Director Su." Director Su then announced loudly with her hands behind her back, "The blood sample tests are back. Everyone is healthy. No infectious diseases or suspicious viruses. Indeed, college students have good resistance, but everyone still needs to undergo a thorough cleansing, after which you will be assigned to the 4th survival pod." As the staff directed, everyone lined up for the deep cleaning. At that moment, Director Su pointed at Wu Qingyu and said, "You, come with me." Wu Qingyu's eyes lit up, and he began boasting to his classmates, "I told you my father has a significant position here. He'll make sure I'm well taken care of. I'm not like the rest of you." The classmates looked at him with envy. Wu Jiangwo then whispered in his ear, "Little Yu, these are extraordinary times. You must abide by the rules here. You cannot refuse what the leaders ask of you. Remember that." Wu Qingyu nodded, somewhat puzzled, thinking he might be assigned to some important position. Then, Director Su warmly put an arm around Wu Qingyu's shoulder, saying, "Wu Qingyu, right? Come with me." Watching Wu Qingyu receive special treatment, everyone else was filled with envy. envy. Wu Qingyu followed Director Su through the shelter, marveling at the vastness of West Mountain Base. The temperature underground was much warmer, around 6 or 7 degrees Celsius, a stark contrast to the outside cold. Soldiers in white uniforms guarded every door, making the place seem extremely solemn and secure. Director Su led Wu Qingyu to a room and directed him to the bathroom. Go take a shower. Wu Qingyu, not having bathed for 2 months, didn't think twice. Excited for a hot shower, he rushed into the bathroom and indulged for a full half hour. However, upon emerging from the bathroom, wrapped only in a towel, he was stunned. The room was bathed in a suggestive pink light, and Director Su was dressed in a scanty outfit, her eyes filled with seductive intent. Before Wu Qingyu could react, she pulled him close. What are you waiting for? Come here. After the encounter, Director Su, seemingly satisfied, dressed and left the room. Wu Jiangwo had been waiting outside the whole time. As Director Su exited, he approached obsequiously. Director Su, was my son to your satisfaction? She gave a thumbs up. He's definitely the son of Director Wu. I'm quite pleased with his talents. Did he inherit them from you? Wu Jiangwo responded with a foolish smile. Please, don't call me director anymore. Those days are behind me. Director Su commanded. Clean up the tissues and such inside. I'll arrange for extra supplies to be issued to you. Wu Jiangwo was overjoyed, bowing deeply in gratitude. Thank you for your generosity. Director Su, call on me anytime you need, and I'll bring my son right over to serve you. Meanwhile, Liang Yu and the other students had just completed their deep cleaning and were dressed in new clothes, which they found quite unfashionable. These styles and colors are so outdated, they complained. Just then, a leader-like woman with glasses entered. Everyone, follow me. I'll take you to where you'll be working and living. Behind the woman with glasses stood 2 armed soldiers, casting a gloomy aura over everyone. The students, lined up and following the leader, felt a growing sense of unease. Deep underground, under the dim lighting guarded by armed soldiers, a palpable sense of oppression made it hard for them to breathe. They huddled together, looking to Liang Yu for guidance. As a large iron door rose, they were presented with a massive workspace filled with bicycles. To their astonishment, inside were thousands of people pedaling vigorously. Every face was empty, numb, and exhausted, yet no one dared to stop. A privileged young lady, stunned, asked, "What are these people doing?" The woman with glasses glanced over her shoulder and explained, "This is your workplace. Your job will be to generate electricity for the base. These bicycles are connected to the power system. You will each receive a manual of the base's regulations, which you must adhere to strictly or face severe consequences." Her expression was ice cold, not impatient, but terrifying enough to chill one's bones. "You better work hard. Your ration is linked to the amount of electricity you generate. If you want to survive, don't slack off." Suddenly, a girl collapsed to the ground, crying bitterly, clutching at Teacher Liang's hand, repeatedly calling out to her. All the girls began to cry, their tears flowing freely. Accustomed to a life of luxury, these young women had never experienced such hardship and instinctively looked to their only teacher for hope. They reminisced about the better days at Azure Sky Academy, where Teacher Liang had taken care of everything, protecting them and finding food. Now, the environment was akin to the sweatshops of old societies. The female leader was indifferent to their crying. "Save your pity party. I advise you to conserve your energy for generating power. Otherwise, I guarantee you won't even have the energy to cry." Liang Yu comforted the students, saying, "Even though I have special abilities, with these armed soldiers right next to us, I dare not revolt." Liang Yu then realized, this place is no longer the so-called official refuge. It has become a tool for some power organization. We students can't get proper placement. It seems my previous thoughts were too naive. Elsewhere, after Director Su closed the door and left, Wu Jiangwo rushed into the room, concerned for his son. Wu Qingyu lay on the bed, exhausted, his eyes no longer focused. Wu Jiangwo looked at his son with a pained expression and said, "Little Yu, are you alright?" He then sighed deeply. "The rules of the game are like this now. If you want to survive standing, you must be prepared to accept everything lying down. You'll get used to it eventually." Wu Qingyu, tears streaming down his face, looked at his father and asked, "How could it turn out like this? Aren't you the chief? Why didn't you tell me about the situation here earlier?" Wu Qingyu thought that coming here, he could continue living as a privileged second-generation official. Wu Jiangwo, with a heavy voice, said, "After the apocalypse, all the rules changed. The so-called chief position is now worthless." He then began to recount what had happened since the apocalypse. Initially, the people who came to the base were from the top of the pyramid and Heavenly Sea City. Everyone respected each other, and researchers speculated that the snow disaster would end soon, and everyone could return to their positions, restoring their former status and cooperation. But soon, scientists discovered that the effects of the supernova explosion were far beyond anyone's expectations. The Earth had entered an ice age, which might not end for decades or even centuries. This meant that the past status and identity would cease to exist. At that moment, a group of people awakened powerful special abilities, widening the class gap. Those in control of armed forces rebelled and seized control of West Mountain Base, eventually imposing a hierarchy. Wu Jiangwo continued gravely, "Wherever there are humans, there will be hierarchies. What happened to you today is the first lesson of your life and death struggle in the future. Now, we are at the bottom, so we must unconditionally submit submit to the rulers. To survive, these sacrifices are actually nothing. Meanwhile, Liang Yu and her students had a busy day and finally got some rest. Only now did they start to grasp the full extent of their situation. After pedaling bicycles for an entire day, they were rewarded with only a bowl of some protein paste-like food. The students, accustomed to a life of luxury, couldn't adapt to the intense labor and oppressive environment. They gathered around Teacher Liang, lamenting, "We've pedaled all day and our backsides are sore. When will this end? I'd rather die than continue like this." Seeing her students in such agony, Liang Yu felt deeply pained, but was at a loss for what to do. Under these circumstances, just being alive is already quite difficult. Look at those pedaling with us. All were once people of status. A world where everyone is happy and enjoys life simply doesn't exist. But don't be too pessimistic. At least you are alive and able to fend for yourselves. Liang Yu had come to accept this way of life and even found it less burdensome than before. Previously, she had to care for all the students while constantly guarding against attacks from supernatural beings. One of the students, filled with indignation, declared, "We are the elite of society. Why should we work like slaves for them?" Teacher Liang, with a look of helplessness, realized that the students still couldn't grasp their new reality. "I'm just a teacher. What can I do? Any random person from the power station was a director or leader before. I have no say here." At that moment, the door suddenly opened, and Wu Qinyu walked in, looking dispirited. Everyone quickly surrounded him, asking, "Your dad is a leader at the base. Can he look out for us? We don't want to pedal the bicycles anymore. Even clerical work would be better." Wu Qinyu, looking grim, responded, "Don't be delusional. Everyone at the base has a specific role, and your task is to generate power." Teacher Liang approached and asked, "Wu Qinyu, what have you done today?" Clenching his fists, Wu Qinyu was haunted by the humiliating events of the day. "Today, I got a better understanding of the base's current situation with my father. Our position is quite dangerous now." Wu Qinyu, disheartened, shared the current state of the base with Liang Yu. "Teacher Liang, we will have to rely on you from now on." Liang Yu, after some thought, seemed to understand Wu Qinyu's implication. Being a martial arts expert and now awakened with special abilities, she knew it was only a matter of time before she became important in the current hierarchy of the base. Wu Qinyu then relayed the intelligence he had gathered. The leader of the West Mountain organization is Chen Xinyan, a former high-ranking official controlling the armed forces of Heavenly Sea City. Many of his subordinates have awakened special abilities and quickly took control of the entire base, restructuring its order. To manage the organization more effectively, Chen Xinyan divided the base into 4 tiers of living capsules. The first tier houses Chen Xinyan and his relatives, enjoying the best living conditions. The second tier is mostly top scientists and medical professionals whose living conditions are comparable to pre-apocalypse standards. The third tier houses the armed forces, originally the elite warriors of Heavenly Sea City, now including powerful squads with special abilities, living in a relatively carefree state. The bottom tier is where we are, the fourth tier, making up the majority of the West Mountain organization, doing the hardest work yet receiving the least resources. We have no way out, closely monitored by the guard team from the third tier. Any act of defiance is tantamount to suicide. The students were stunned by the revelation. One girl, overcome with despair, cried out, "Does this mean we are trapped here for life? What's the point of living then?" Wu Qinyu coldly responded, "They agreed to bring us here to replenish their labor force. If you want to end it all, no one will stop you. They don't care about our lives. They can easily replace us with more survivors from outside." At this moment, a tall male student angrily grabbed Wu Qinyu's collar, accusing him, "Isn't this all your fault? You exposed our location, leading to our resources being stolen and us being captured to this hellish place to toil." Wu Qinyu, with an impassive expression, simply stared back at him. "Do you think staying at Azure Sky Academy would have spared you from being devoured by the cat demons?" The boy was left speechless. Wu Qinyu pushed him away forcefully, then turned to Liang Yu and said, "Our only hope now is Teacher Liang. You're different from us. You're a special ability user. At West Mountain Base, ability users enjoy privileges. So, Teacher Liang, you must help us." Wu Qinyu's words awakened the students, who quickly surrounded Liang Yu, pleading in a flurry, "Teacher Liang, you are our teacher. Looking after students is your responsibility. We can't handle hard labor. If this continues, we'll go insane." Liang Yu, looking helpless, replied, "I will ensure your safety, but I'm afraid I can't do much about the division of labor in the base." After a day's rest, her physical strength had mostly recovered. With her current combat ability, she could easily defeat armed soldiers, but she wouldn't lose her reason over it. She even thought that the order of the base was reasonable. Then, she turned and lay on her bed, saying, "Everyone, rest up. We still have to get up and work tomorrow, or we'll be drained." Reluctantly, the students returned to their beds. Liang Yu felt a bit sorry for them and was willing to try changing the situation if there was a chance. The next morning, the dormitory's loudspeaker went off promptly, and everyone hurriedly prepared, then lined up for the cafeteria. The woman with glasses, accompanied by a few soldiers, took a megaphone and shouted, "Good morning, everyone. We've survived another day. Let us thank our great leader, Chen Xinyan, for living happily until now." Everyone excitedly cheered, "Long live leader Chen Xinyan." Even Liang Yu's students couldn't help but join in the chant, making her scalp tingle. This is brainwashing, she thought. The woman with glasses continued through the megaphone. "Yesterday, the base rescued another group of survivors. Now we're all one big family. Now, let's have our new family members introduce themselves. Welcome." Everyone's eyes turned to Liang Yu and the others, starting to applaud warmly. Liang Yu felt a cold sweat, familiar with this type of brainwashing. This is the famous herd effect. Don't think that just being vigilant will prevent assimilation. Once you integrate into the collective, you'll slowly identify with everyone and everything around you, eventually being unable to extricate yourself. This is why so many intelligent college students fall into scams they once looked down upon. Liang Yu took a deep breath. Although she understood the situation well, she felt helpless and could only lead her students to introduce themselves one by one. The woman with glasses then arranged a morning meeting, starting with a grand chorus of praising the organization, followed by a few enjoyable games. Throughout the morning meeting, Liang Yu noticed subtle changes in her students' expressions. They seemed to be slowly accepting this new group, even starting to chat with the workers they met during the games. Liang Yu found a bittersweet comfort in this, thinking, living in such oblivion is better than waiting for death at Azure Sky Academy. At that moment, a young woman in a black suit, followed by two armed soldiers, entered. The woman with glasses immediately approached her with a flattering demeanor. "Secretary Gu, what an honor to have you here. There's no need for you to come to such a place personally. Just send a message, and I'll take care of it for you." Secretary Gu didn't even give the woman a glance, took the megaphone, and announced loudly, "We rescued a new group of survivors yesterday. Is Miss Liang Yu here?" Liang Yu stood up calmly. "I am Liang Yu." Hearing their teacher's name, the students looked towards her with eyes full of hope. Liang Yu walked over slowly. Secretary Gu approached and shook hands with Liang Yu, introducing herself. "I am Guro, the secretary of leader Chen Xinyan. Our leader would like to meet you." As soon as these words were said, the entire cafeteria erupted into commotion. Everyone started discussing wildly. The leader of the West Mountain organization actually wants to meet a newcomer, and even send a personal secretary to deliver the message. Isn't this treatment a fast track to soaring high? The students were especially thrilled, urging, "Teacher Liang, please don't forget about us." Amidst the noisy discussions, Secretary Go looked up slightly. Her gaze was stern, and the cafeteria fell silent instantly. She then smiled at Liang Yu and said, "Miss Liang, please follow me." Liang Yu was curious about who Chen Xinyan really was, but she knew any opportunity to leave the power plant was a good one. Led by Guro, she quickly arrived at Chen Xinyan's office, where she met a kind-faced, middle-aged man, about 50 years old. As soon as he saw Liang Yu, he walked over with a smile and took her hand, showering her with compliments. "Miss Liang is such a responsible and great teacher, leading so many students to survive through such hardships. It's truly admirable." Liang Yu was somewhat overwhelmed by this sudden warmth and didn't quite understand the situation before Chen Xinyan, still holding her arm, invited her to sit and expressed his desire to seek her advice. His gentle and kind demeanor made Liang Yu feel a sense of warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. After a round of comprehensive compliments, Chen Xinyan shared with Liang Yu his vision for West Mountain Base, including its planned 4-tier life pod structure. Gradually gaining her approval, Chen Xinyan then earnestly said to Liang Yu, "I hope to leverage your strength to maintain this base and preserve the spark of human civilization." Upon hearing this, Liang Yu immediately felt the nobility of Chen Xinyan's intentions and readily agreed. "For the future of humanity, I will not shirk from any place where I can be of use." Chen Xinyan's smile deepened, and he called Secretary Guro and indirectly arranged for Liang Yu to be placed in the second life pod, a structure akin to a high-end office building with spacious corridors and bright lighting, almost making one forget it was hundreds of meters underground. Liang Yu felt she had made the right decision, though the students laboring away on the bicycles generating electricity seemed to have slipped from her mind. Meanwhile, at Lark Manor, Zhang Yi's main task during this period had been feeding the cat. That day, he prepared premium cat treats and even a fresh, golden fish, pleading gently with Flower, "I've been feeding you for a week now. Be my pet, will you? If you agree to come back with me, I'll make sure you're fed well every day." After Flower quickly finished the food, Zhang Yi continued to coax, "My place is very warm, you know. There's a cozy fireplace to sit by. Why suffer in the cold outdoors?" Flower also looked through the French window into the house, observing the warm and comfortable scene inside. For the first time, it showed a hesitant expression. Zhang Yi noticed the change in its eyes and felt hopeful, so he stood up and slowly walked towards the main door. Sure enough, Flower cautiously followed. At that moment, Zhang Yi was as gentle as an old father, step by step trying to lure it inside. Flower indeed followed him into the house. Zhang Yi was ecstatic inside. Once Flower entered the house, it began to wreak havoc without restraint, jumping and scratching everywhere. It even tore at the $1 million sofa, but Zhang Yi watched with a smile, even encouragingly saying, "Go ahead and make yourself at home. This is your home now." Meanwhile, Zhou Kir jealously remarked, "It's a good thing this cat can't turn into a woman, or I'd have no status at home at all." Fresh into the shelter, Flower was filled with curiosity, causing trouble all day long. Zhang Yi was extremely tolerant, letting it leave footprints everywhere and even not minding when it smashed a $1 million antique vase. It wasn't until Flower, tired from playing, curled up on the chair to rest that Zhang Yi finally breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that building initial trust was most important when dealing with cats. Once that process fails, it's hard to make up for it later. Zhang Yi took a deep breath, thinking, "I've never been this tired even when I was groveling in the past." Then he tried to reach out to pet Flower, but before he could touch it, Flower turned around and yelped, "Alert!" They awkwardly made eye contact for 2 seconds before Flower finally lowered its guard and settled down. Zhang Yi took another deep breath, contentedly succeeding in petting Flower. Flower let out a comfortable purr, finally acknowledging Zhang Yi as its owner. Zhang Yi was completely relieved, thinking, "I've never been this tired even when groveling to Fanmuching before." Gaining Flower's trust brought indescribable joy to Zhang Yi. After Flower joined the big family, the shelter was filled with a new kind of happiness. The girls competed to pet the cat daily. Yang Mi even took it with her during her showers. Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen even let it sleep between them. During this time, Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen were not idle either. With Yang Xinxin maintaining the shelter's cybersecurity, no one in the world dared to breach it. And as a top hacker, Yang Xinxin was not satisfied with just defense. She used her powerful hacking skills to initiate counter-invasions along the trails of any attempted breaches. After discovering important information, she immediately notified Zhang Yi. Proudly smiling, Yang Xinxin revealed to Zhang Yi, "Brother Zhang Yi, that rookie who tried to invade our network has been located by me." She showed him a map in front of Zhang Yi, which he recognized at a glance as the Heavenly Sea City map, clearly marking their own location, and another flashing red dot likely indicating the invader's location. South close. It seems to be in the southwestern frontier of the West Mountain area, just over 30 kilometers from Lark Manor. However, Yang Xinxin coolly remarked, "Their technology is crude compared to mine, and their equipment isn't very advanced either. I easily breached their system with our supercomputer. The data on their computer is encrypted, though, so it will take some time to crack. But what's certain is that there's a huge organization in the West Mountain area of Heavenly Sea City. Given their proximity, conflict seems inevitable." Zhang Yi crossed his arms and took a deep breath. "What's meant to come will always come. I, Zhang Yi, don't seek trouble, but I'm not afraid of it either. If anyone dares to target me, no matter who they are, I'll make sure they pay dearly." Xinxin, continue to crack that information. The more intelligence we gather, the better. "I'm going to check on Karen," he said, heading to the mechanical workshop on the basement level. Upon calling over Lu Karen, who was busy at work, she greeted him with a bright smile, clearly grateful and dedicated to Zhang Yi's instructions. The workshop was noisy and swelteringly hot. She then turned and fetched something from a shelf. "Brother Zhang Yi, look what I've got for you," she said, handing him a silencer for a sniper rifle. Zhang Yi was thrilled. The silencer was crucial for him. His already enhanced firearms potency could theoretically allow him to snipe enemies from 300 meters away. The only issue had been the loud noise revealing his position, but now that problem was solved. With a thumbs up, Zhang Yi praised, "Karen really knows me well." Flattered and blushing, Lu Karen shyly replied, "Try it and see if it works well. I can adjust and modify it based on your feedback. Just tell me whatever you need in the future, and I'll do my best to make it for you." In the midst of the conversation, Zhang Yi suddenly put his arm around Lu Karen's shoulder, asking in a serious tone, "I came specifically for this, but can you make landmines, grenades, and the like?" Her heart raced with Zhang Yi's warm hand on her shoulder. She looked at him hesitantly and a bit defiantly said, "Is that all you need? I'm an expert in mechanics. The technology in these things is less than that of a new energy battery. Aren't you underestimating me? I learned how to make those in primary school. They're child's play for me." Feeling a bit embarrassed, Zhang Yi thought, even geniuses need recognition. Asking for something without challenge might be an insult to her. Lu Karen saw the bewilderment on Zhang Yi's face and quickly explained, "Those things are actually outdated. They are single combat equipment from hundreds of years ago, hardly useful now. Basically, they are just gunpowder. With the right materials, an average middle school student could make them." Zhang Yi suddenly became serious. Times have changed. After the arrival of the extreme cold tide, modern high-tech weapons have become useless. Aircraft carriers and planes are almost scrap metal. Instead, these primitive thermal weapons will become very useful. I just went to Yang Xinxin's place. Our shelter has been targeted. Although we don't understand the opponent's background yet, it's likely a powerful armed organization. So, we have to prepare thoroughly in advance and set up tight traps around the shelter to be foolproof. Hearing this, Lu Karen's expression also turned serious. She suddenly felt that these were not child's play and was filled with a sense of mission. Zhang Yi smiled and stroked her hair. "But don't worry, just do as I say. I can handle everything else. With me here, I will protect you," he said, pinching Lu Karen's cheek tenderly and affectionately. The naive Lu Karen was overwhelmed by this and teared up instantly. Zhang Yi continued, actually, I've always wanted to tell you, from the first time I saw you, I felt a special connection. You look so much like my sister, and you always give me the urge to protect you. Lu Karen's eyes filled with tears as she sniffed and said excitedly, really? Zhang Yi gently smiled and replied, absolutely true. When have I ever lied? But at this moment, Lu Karen felt a twinge of disappointment, thinking, just a sister? Before she could ponder further, Zhang Yi continued his affectionate gestures, softly caressing her cheek. Just help your brother with his work. Leave everything else to me. As long as I'm here, I won't let you suffer a single bit of harm. Seeing Zhang Yi's resolute gaze, Lu Karen's heart fluttered. It was the first time she had been treated so intimately by a man, and she was momentarily lost for words, only managing to nod in agreement repeatedly. Zhang Yi stood up, ready to leave. He said, I won't disturb you any longer. Remember, rest when you're tired, drink more water when you're thirsty, and take good care of yourself. Don't overwork yourself. Then, Zhang Yi left the studio, leaving behind his lingering presence in her dazed eyes. Once outside, Zhang Yi took a deep breath, feeling he had once again stirred the emotions of an innocent girl. He thought to himself that with a girl as precious as her, using some benign tactics was necessary. Even leveraging his charm was acceptable when it came to securing dangerous items like weapons, which needed to be firmly in his hands. To heighten the vigilance of Chun Lei and Uncle Yu, Zhang Yi sent them a message urgently. Recently, through the supercomputer, we've discovered some unknown forces. They might possess strong military capabilities and are only 30 kilometers away from me. You two must be very careful in your actions. The country has already collapsed, and anyone claiming to represent the state is 100% a scammer. Do not trust anyone. He also reminded them crucially, most importantly, never reveal your special abilities. Uncle Yu and Chun Lei promptly responded with a sense of urgency, received, and showed concern for Zhang Yi's safety as well. Zhang Yi pondered, it's still unclear how much information the other party has, so I dare not leave the shelter rashly. As long as I don't go out, no matter how powerful they are, they can't do anything to me. But then, considering Chun Lei's position across the river, he realized that if the force from the West Hills truly coveted his shelter, Su family town would be right on their path. With this in mind, he quickly sent a private message to Chun Lei. If your village encounters danger you can't handle, remember to run in my direction. In this ice-cold apocalypse, Zhang Yi knew the value of an ice ability user and the importance of keeping such a loyal and capable ally safe. Meanwhile, Chun Lei, reading the warning from Zhang Yi, seemed somewhat unconcerned. He mumbled to himself, brother Zhang is really something. Right across is the big villa area. How could they possibly be interested in my poor village? Meanwhile, about 30 kilometers west of Su family town, once a development zone with many buildings under construction, a tall and robust man stepped out of a building, complaining, why won't the snow stop? If it continues like this, the entire earth will be covered. Beside him, Xia Huanhuan smiled faintly and responded, Lu Ziang, stop worrying unnecessarily. We need to focus on completing our mission. Besides, after 2 months of heavy snow, the moisture in the air has almost condensed and consumed. The snow should stop soon. Xia Huanhuan caught a snowflake in her hand. It's said that even the equatorial regions in Africa are now dozens of degrees below zero. From now on, it will only get colder, and snowfall will become increasingly rare. Fortunately, the heavy snow will soon stop. This is probably the creator's last mercy on the world. Lu Ziang, not quite appreciating the poetic sentiment, directly sat on a snow sled. In contrast, Xia Huanhuan mounted a large dog, her petite figure posing no burden to the animal. She took out a device from her pocket, reported the completion of a task from a few days ago, and received new instructions. We were initially limited to the West Mountain area, but according to new orders, we need to make a special search in another place. Although the target isn't specifically mentioned, Xia Huanhuan pondered for a moment. It's probably not a particularly important task. We'll just go through the motions, and then return to base. After a long journey, Xia Huanhuan suddenly stood up and looked into the distance towards Lark Manor, where Zhang Yi resided. That should be our destination. She then settled herself on the sled. Let's be alert. After searching here, we can finish up. At Xia Huanhuan's whistle, 4 large sled dogs rushed towards their destination. Their initial destination was Zhang Yi's Lark Manor, but the sight of the snow village, especially the enormous ice castle at its center, took Xia Huanhuan and Lu Ziang by surprise. After the heavy snowfall, Chun Lei, using his ice abilities, had helped the villagers construct ice dwellings, particularly his anime-inspired castle in the middle of the village. The arrival of Xia Huanhuan and Lu Ziang alerted the village's sled dogs, whose barking quickly attracted a large group of villagers. Since the battle at Lark Manor, the villagers had been on edge, and any slight commotion brought them out in force, armed and ready. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Ziang were once again astounded. It's incredible to see so many survivors in this extreme cold apocalypse. A leading villager, armed with a homemade firearm, confronted them with 3 critical questions. Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing here? Xia Huanhuan stepped forward with a slight smile and said, we are from from a government organization dispatched to search for survivors of the snow disaster. Please don't be too nervous. As she spoke, she took out her own credential. She was well aware that these survivors still harbored some hope in the government, and therefore, they had already prepared so-called credentials in advance. The acting village head, Su Dongtang, examined the credentials and, impressed by their uniform and demeanor, decided to trust them. He quickly turned hospitable. So you are officials. Would you like to come into the village for a visit? He signaled the villagers to prepare food and drink and instructed them to donate some of their stored food to treat these two officials properly. However, some villagers were skeptical. These two are of unknown origin. Is it necessary to treat them this way? Su Dongtang, with a hint of depth in his words, reassured them, all I need to know is who they represent, not who they are. In these chaotic times, Su East Village has barely survived. If we can establish a connection with influential people, it might be the making of the Su family. Besides, we're only offering some food. They won't eat much. The villagers, understanding the strategy, brought out their best hidden treasures to treat the guests. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang were taken aback by the lively and well-organized community, seemingly unaffected by the heavy snow and apparently well-supplied. They inquired of village head Su Dongtang, your village is so well-managed. How did you achieve this? I'm curious. Upon hearing the query, Su Dongtang puffed out his chest, ready to impress the so-called officials. Firstly, it's the indomitable spirit of self-reliance and resilience of our Su family. A mere snow disaster can't defeat us. Of course, as the village head, I've played a significant role. I always remind the villagers to have foresight and be prepared. Hence, most of us haven't worried about food. Su Dongtang boasted proudly. I don't mean to brag, but no one has starved to death in our village since the snow disaster. Some of the village elders nearby were speechless at his claim, thinking to themselves, this Su Dongtang really doesn't shy away from claiming credit. He's been village head for less than a week. How did all the achievements suddenly become his? It was all under the command of the old village head, and has nothing to do with Su Dongtang. Xia Huanhuan casually asked, so, your village has accumulated a lot of food? Su Dongtang, more self-assured now, replied, little sister, you seem not very familiar with the agricultural market of Heavenly Sea City. Let me tell you, in the past, 1/3 of the vegetables in Heavenly Sea City were supplied by our Su family town. Just as he was about to boast further, he caught himself, realizing he shouldn't so easily reveal the village's food reserves. He might inadvertently invite trouble if the authorities decided to claim them. Quickly shifting his tone, Su Dongtang said evasively, it's been snowing for over a month, and most of the grain and vegetables are nearly spoiled. The villagers are basically struggling to make ends meet. Xia Huanhuan, not easily fooled, commented, for a village as large as Su family town, probably housing hundreds of families, maintaining subsistence is impressive. Su Dongtang, swelling with pride, continued, actually, it's mainly our Su East village that's managed well. Look at the ice houses we've built. I directed everyone to construct them, perfectly solving our housing problem. Other villages' houses have been buried under the snow. Their village heads didn't have the foresight like me, resulting in many freezing to death. The other villagers watched Su Dongtang's performance, speechless from disbelief, yet due to his status as the village head, they refrained from pointing out the absurdity. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang were incredulous, secretly marveling, I never thought this old man would be so prescient. Lu Xiang remarked as he looked out at the ice castle outside the window, it's incredible that such a structure could be built in this icy apocalypse. Your village's craftsmen must be really skilled. Su Dongtang started to get carried away. We have many skilled workers in the village. This little skill is nothing to us. However, Su Dongtang's blatant self-promotion inadvertently led to the deliberate overlooking of Chunlei's presence. In order to entertain the so-called leaders, the villagers lined up to bring out long-treasured delicacies from their homes. They had been eating compressed food for weeks and now couldn't help but marvel at the feast before them, thinking how wealthy the village must be. At this moment, Su Dongtang approached with a sycophantic smile to pour wine, offering his many years treasured drink. Do the two leaders have any insider news? When does the government plan to address the snow disaster? Are there any disaster relief materials being distributed? The two continued to eat and drink silently until Xia Huanhuan said indifferently, we've already made plans for the disaster relief. It should be implemented soon. Hearing this, Su Dongtang and the villagers looked forward with hope. That's wonderful news. These days are too hard to endure. If this continues, our whole village will either freeze or starve to death. Has any expert analyzed when this snow disaster will end? Xia Huanhuan continued nonchalantly, it should be soon. Haven't you noticed the snow has lessened a lot recently? The experts say it will stop soon. Lu Xiang couldn't help but glance at Xia Huanhuan, thinking, with her calm and steady demeanor, if I didn't know some inside information, even I would believe her. Suddenly, Xia Huanhuan asked, after the snow disaster, did anyone in your village experience any strange changes? Su Dongtang and the villagers were momentarily stunned, all aware she was referring to Chunlei. Fortunately, Su Dongtang wasn't too foolish and responded with a forced laugh. Everything is normal in our village. Strange changes? We've never heard of such things. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang's mission was to seek resources, but more importantly, to find mutants and bring them back to the base. The villagers' changing expressions did not escape the observant Xia Huanhuan. She put down her wine glass and said indifferently, after the snow disaster, some individuals have undergone mutations and acquired extraordinary abilities. The government highly values these individuals. If you can provide useful information, the organization will reward you generously. The villagers hesitated, not daring to speak in front of the village head, Su Dongtang. He was internally debating whether to disclose Chun Lei's situation, considering he hadn't yet received any tangible benefits. Curious, Su Dongtang asked, "May I inquire what the organization plans to do with these individuals?" Xia Huanhuan's certainty of mutants in the village strengthened. She replied warmly, "These powerful mutants will become the backbone of our organization, crucial for rebuilding our community in the future. If you provide useful information, the organization will acknowledge your contribution significantly." Su Dongtang pondered, cynically thinking that promises were easier said than done. He thought to himself, Chun Lei is the village's treasure. Without him, our village would have been doomed after the snow disaster. I can't just hand him over so easily. He then took out his phone. "Give me your contact details. If we discover anything unusual, I will report to the leaders immediately." Just then, Xia Huanhuan's expression suddenly changed. She stared intently at Su Dongtang with a smile that wasn't quite a smile and said, "Village Chief Su, is there something you're not telling us?" The sudden change in Xia Huanhuan's demeanor scared Su Dongtang, and the atmosphere turned incredibly tense. Su Dongtang's hand froze midair as he stuttered, "We are all law-abiding citizens here. I assure you there's no falsehood in our words." Xia Huanhuan imposingly tapped the table and pressed, "Are you sure there are no mutants in your village? Think carefully before you answer. The organization is taking this matter very seriously. If you dare to hide any information, I guarantee you won't get away with it." Realizing his lie was caught, Su Dongtang looked embarrassed, but quickly thought of a way out and whispered to Xia Huanhuan, "Actually, we do know of a strange person, but he's not from our Su East village, so I didn't dare to mention it carelessly. The fellow's name is Zhang Yi, and he lives in Lark Manor across from our village." Upon hearing this, Xia Huanhuan's eyes lit up. The name matched the target mentioned in her special mission. Overjoyed by the coincidence, she thought, this is a perfect opportunity to gather more information. To cover his verbal slip-up, Su Dongtang divulged everything he knew, that Zhang Yi is like a merciless devil. His home is surrounded by traps. A few days ago, we just wanted to borrow some resources from him, and without a word, he killed hundreds of our people. The villagers, fueled by indignation, chimed in one after another. That devil is definitely not normal. His methods are extremely cruel. Observing the villagers' unrestrained anger, Xia Huanhuan thought, this doesn't seem like an act. My final task is to find Zhang Yi, and then I can return to the base for a comfortable life. Eager for any information about Zhang Yi, she inquired, but surprisingly, the whole Su family town knew virtually nothing about him. They couldn't provide age, height, or appearance details because the battle against him was at night. That night, Zhang Yi, like a ghostly sniper, was elusive, and nobody got a clear look at him. They were too busy fleeing in terror. Lu Xing added urgently, "But you must know something about his abilities, right?" Su Dongtang helplessly replied, "We don't understand these abilities or mutations. We just think that his capabilities are beyond a normal person. His home is surrounded by traps, and he has a snowmobile and a sniper rifle. But as for these matters, you'll need to investigate yourselves. We are just honest, simple farmers." Hearing this, Xia Huanhuan's eyes flickered with disappointment. Understanding a mutant's abilities is key to dealing with them, and without this information, her excitement was premature. Seeing no valuable information was forthcoming, Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xing finished their meal and prepared to leave. Su Dongtang, ever obsequious, escorted them to the village entrance. "Leaders, don't forget about Su family town when distributing any good policies in the future," Xia Huanhuan promised with a smile. "With such good management of your village, I will definitely report to my superiors. You won't lack rewards after the disaster." Overjoyed, Su Dongtang generously handed them more of his treasured wine. Once out of the village, Xia Huanhuan quickly pulled out her device to report to the base about Su family town. Discovered a large village, Su family town, with an approximate survivor count of 2,000. It is estimated to have a considerable stockpile of food. No traces of mutants detected. Lu Xing, puzzled, asked, "Why mislead them with false promises of reconstruction and relief plans? Isn't that all nonsense?" Disdain, Xia Huanhuan looked at Lu Xing and said, "If I didn't deceive them, do you think they would have treated us so well? Without a little intimidation, would they have provided us with accurate information?" Lu Xing, somewhat naively, scratched his head and chuckled, "But those villagers seemed so simple and honest. Isn't it too cruel to deceive them like this?" Xia Huanhuan replied with a meaningful tone, "This is why you're just my subordinate. it. I tell them what they want to hear. As long as they are grateful to me, I don't care about the rest. Lu Ziang, still not convinced, added, what if they find out everything you said was a lie? What will you do then? Xia Huanhuan confidently responded, to them, we represent the government. Whatever we say is taken as legitimate. When that time comes, I'll have a new script ready. Now, knowing their target was in Lark Manor across the river, Xia Huanhuan and Lu Ziang prepared to meet this Zhang Yi. Lu Ziang pulled out his binoculars, observing Lark Manor carefully. Our trip to Su East Village wasn't fruitless. At least we know his home is surrounded by traps. Xia Huanhuan couldn't help but admire. To live in such a luxurious villa during the apocalypse is indeed enviable. Lu Ziang scoffed. What's there to envy in this godforsaken weather? It's freezing outside. With such a big villa, he can't possibly have enough fuel to keep warm. The temperature inside won't be much better. Not to mention the daily necessities. Our base is much more comfortable. Xia Huanhuan thought disdainfully, if the mastermind behind emptying the southern warehouse is truly Zhang Yi, then whether he has enough supplies or not is really uncertain. Xia Huanhuan said to Lu Ziang, take me over there. She agilely jumped onto his shoulders. Subsequently, Lu Ziang made a sudden leap. They both landed steadily on the wall of the shelter. Once inside the compound, Xia Huanhuan couldn't help but admire. This shelter, built by the wealthy Wang Siming, is not only luxurious in appearance but nearly impregnable, comparable to a military fortress. But unfortunately for you, there is no fortress I can't breach in this world. Lu Ziang, concerned, suggested, shouldn't we try to negotiate first? It might be dangerous to bargain like this, especially since your ability isn't combat-oriented. Xia Huanhuan was slightly irritated. Are you teaching me how to do my job? Don't forget, even without mutant abilities, I'm still a special forces soldier. Lu Ziang didn't argue further, just cautioned her to be careful and to signal him if there was trouble. Confidently, Xia Huanhuan assured him, don't worry, Zhang Yi would never expect someone to invade in this manner. She then slipped through the wall and found herself in the shelter's living room. The warmth of the shelter enveloped her immediately, and she was astonished. This place is even warmer than the West Mountain base. Looking at all the lavish furnishings and appliances, living here is even better than a fairy tale. Xia Huanhuan was now certain that Zhang Yi must possess a wealth of resources, whether food or energy. As she was about to continue exploring, a sudden cat's cry startled her. Considering everything inside was unknown and recognizing the shelter's significance, she decided it was wiser to return and report back. However, unwilling to leave without making her presence known, she placed a military knife on the table as a warning to Zhang Yi, then phased through the walls to leave the shelter. Seeing Xia Huanhuan return safely, Lu Ziang immediately asked, what's the situation inside? Xia Huanhuan, with excitement in her eyes, replied, there's a significant discovery. We need to report back to the base immediately. I'll explain on the way. Lu Ziang, surprised by their abrupt retreat, questioned, we've taken down powerful factions before with ease. Why retreat now? It's not like you to back down. Xia Huanhuan, is Zhang Yi that formidable? After some thought, Xia Huanhuan explained, judging by the situation inside, my instinct tells me we are no match for him. Besides, I'm not particularly skilled in combat. This is the last mission, and it's prudent to ask for reinforcements from the base rather than take unnecessary risks. Accepting the command, Lu Ziang didn't question further and prepared for their departure. Meanwhile, the noise had awoken Zhang Yi. Opening his eyes, he saw Flower, the cat, on high alert. Its fur bristled as it meowed at the door. Recognizing the cat's unusual agitation, Zhang Yi, with his instincts kicking in, drew his pistol and soothingly asked, what's happened? Do you hear something outside? Although Flower understood human speech, it couldn't communicate back, just anxiously meowed and looked around. Zhang Yi checked his phone for any surveillance, but found nothing unusual. However, Flower seemed eager to go outside. Once the door was opened, Flower jumped onto the bar and directed Zhang Yi's attention to the military knife. Picking up the knife, Zhang Yi examined it, realizing, this is military grade. It's not from my collection, and unlikely anyone else here would have such an item. Zhang Yi's pupils dilated in shock, a chill running down his spine. How could someone have placed this here? And more terrifyingly, how did they bypass the shelter's defenses so silently? As these thoughts raced through his mind, he quickly opened the surveillance footage, replaying the past 10 minutes. The scene that unfolded left him dumbfounded. A woman had casually walked through the living room, seemingly emerging from the wall itself. Zhang Yi was astounded. Such an ability was beyond his comprehension, especially in a world increasingly filled with incredible and inexplicable phenomena since the emergence of mutants. He realized the gravity of the threat. This woman must be eliminated. As long as she lives, I won't be able to sleep peacefully. Turning to Flower, Zhang Yi said, you're coming with me. We're going to eliminate that intruder. He then armed himself fully, checking the external surveillance and spotting Xia Huanhuan and Lu Ziang preparing to leave. Just two people. I must eliminate them, especially the woman. Her leaving that knife was a declaration of war, and I can't afford to be lenient. Meanwhile, Xia Huanhuan and Lu Ziang were quickly making their way back on a snow sled, with Xia Huanhuan visibly elated. This reconnaissance mission has been extremely fruitful. Not only did we find a populous and resource-rich village, but we also uncovered secrets about Zhang Yi. Reporting this to the higher-ups will surely be a significant achievement. Curious, Lu Xiang asked, what exactly did you find inside? You've been smiling ever since we left the villa. Xia Huanhuan's excitement was palpable. She turned to Lu Xiang and said, Old Lu, you're just a regular soldier in the team, and there are some things you aren't cleared to know. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll let you in on some secrets. This Zhang Yi is likely connected to the theft from the southern warehouse of Walmart before the snow disaster. This news was a hot topic right before the snow disaster, and even Lu Xiang, still in the military then, was aware of it. Isn't that the brand with thousands of supermarkets, and the southern warehouse stored nearly half of their goods? Xia Huanhuan continued, the estimated value of those goods exceeds 10 billion, enough to sustain a city for over a decade. Lu Xiang, initially without much concept of the enormity, was now genuinely startled. Are you saying that Zhang Yi knows the inside story of this theft? Lu Xiang asked. Xia Huanhuan smiled cryptically. The higher-ups at the base seem to think so. They just sent us to investigate Zhang Yi, hoping to track the stolen goods. But when I entered his house, I realized the situation was far more complicated. His living standards are exceptionally high, even more luxurious than the base leader's #1 life pod. Without substantial resources, who would dare live so extravagantly in these apocalyptic times? This makes me think that we were wrong in our initial approach. Consider it. How could an ordinary person survive so long in the apocalypse, fend off thousands of villagers single-handedly, and kill hundreds? Zhang Yi is likely a powerful mutant, and when you connect this to the warehouse theft, which is an extraordinary event, it all starts to make sense. Lu Xiang was astounded. So you mean he has some ability to conceal resources and might have emptied the warehouse? Xia Huanhuan responded gravely, these are just my personal speculations, but the likelihood is very high. Even if there's just a 1 in 10,000 chance, it's worth the base taking action. Once I report back, even a quarter of Team A's force should be enough to destroy any resistance. No matter how fortified his house is, all defenses are virtually useless against me. Indeed, Xia Huanhuan's ability held infinite potential, especially in siege warfare where throwing in explosives or poison gas could quickly determine the outcome. Lu Xiang looked at the confident Xia Huanhuan, his eyes filled with admiration. You naturally mutated people are just so lucky, not like me. Watching a disheartened Lu Xiang, Xia Huanhuan quickly comforted him, Old Lu, don't be too downhearted. Once I make some achievements and get promoted to a high position at the base, I will certainly not forget about you. Lu Xiang gave a simple smile, then I'll be counting on Sister Huan's support in the future. At that moment, Lu Xiang noticed Xia Huanhuan's head suddenly tilt, and a stream of blood sprayed out from her temple. The smile still remained on her face as she collapsed lifelessly on the sled. Zhang Yi, mounted on the demon cat flower, held a sniper rifle. With the aid of his supernatural ability, he sniped the wall-passing woman in one shot. Watching his old partner and leader die in front of him, Lu Xiang instinctively drew his pistol, but he couldn't locate Zhang Yi. As he hesitated, Zhang Yi had already reloaded, ready to take down the robust man with one shot. But as the shot fired, the man disappeared from the sled like a ghost, taking Xia Huanhuan's body with him. Zhang Yi felt a chill on his scalp. This guy is also a mutant. Two mutants attacking at the same time. The opposing force must be huge. No matter what, I can't let him take back any information about me. Zhang Yi jumped off Flower's back, wondering, what now? It seems too late to contact Chun Lei. Then he thought of Flower. You go force that person out. I'll support you with the sniper here. When we get back, I'll reward you with 100 dried fish. At that moment, Lu Xiang also guessed that the sharpshooter was Zhang Yi. He must have followed us to silence us. With that thought, Lu Xiang quickly took out his device and sent a distress signal to the base. Just then, Lu Xiang heard a thunderous roar, and what he saw next made his pupils constrict in fear. What was this thing? Flower had transformed into a gigantic steel-spiked ball, rolling ferociously towards Lu Xiang, carving a deep trench in its path. Before Lu Xiang could catch his breath, Flower, who had halted momentarily, turned around and lunged at him fiercely. Lu Xiang pulled out an AK from his pants and began firing. However, ordinary bullets seemed to do no harm to Flower. From a distance, Zhang Yi, with his sniper rifle ready, took shots whenever he saw an opportunity. But Lu Xiang, with his peculiarly agile movements, narrowly dodged the bullets each time. Zhang Yi guessed this guy's ability must be related to speed and agility. Despite the situation, Zhang Yi wasn't worried. As a feline, Flower had top-tier agility and speed, along with unmatched stamina. Lu Xiang was forced to face the combined assault of Zhang Yi and Flower. He had to dodge bullets from afar and evade the huge beast up close. Using his abilities also consumed a significant amount of his stamina. Soon, he began to falter, and with the power-enhanced bullet's lethality and precision, Lu Xiang barely dodged a bullet only to be immediately pounced on by Flower, who bit down on his shoulder. As he faced death, Lu Xiang swung his fist at Flower's eye, attempting to take him down with him, but Zhang Yi swiftly fired another shot, hitting him right in the forehead. After both mutants had fallen, Zhang Yi casually walked over. Suddenly, Flower howled at the bodies on the ground. Zhang Yi looked closely and saw the woman they called the Wallpasser, her body surrounded by a golden glow. As Zhang Yi reached out to touch it, he was overwhelmed by an indescribable sensation that rushed to his brain, as if some instinct had awakened. It seemed like he had absorbed absorbed the woman's power. Realizing that mutants' powers could be consumed by one another, Zhang Yi excitedly hugged Flower, showering him with kisses, despite Flower's look of disdain. After absorbing Xia Huanwan's power, Zhang Yi, somewhat puzzled, looked at Lu Xiang's body. Isn't this guy also a mutant? Why didn't I feel any energy shift when I touched him? He collected the bodies into a different space and cleaned up the bloodstains at the scene, contemplating, this world is becoming increasingly incomprehensible. Every step is fraught with danger. My life is destined to be a precarious journey. Can I make it to the other side? After dealing with 2 mutants, Zhang Yi hurried back home. It turned out that Zhou Qi and 3 others were also awakened by Flower's calls. Realizing Zhang Yi and Flower had left, the 4 anxiously waited in the living room. Upon seeing Zhang Yi return, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, Zhang Yi started to assign tasks. I just killed 2 mutants with Flower. It's very likely that we will face retaliation from a powerful force, so we need to make thorough preparations. After a brief arrangement, Zhang Yi went straight to sleep until noon the next day. As soon as he walked into the living room, Yang Xinxin informed him of a significant discovery. Based on the analysis of the devices on those 2 people you brought back last night, I found out that they come from an organization called West Mountain Base. This organization is vast, with thousands of survivors, a strict hierarchical structure, and a powerful armed force, including a group of elite aces, seemingly comprised of special forces and people with supernatural abilities. This wasn't far from what Zhang Yi had expected, but he was still quite shocked by Yang Xinxin's briefing. Ordinary soldiers are not a big threat to us. As long as there isn't a second woman who can phase through walls, my shelter can withstand ordinary weapons. As long as I don't go outside, no one can do anything to me. Finally, a smile appeared on Zhang Yi's face. He had always imagined those unknown forces to be too powerful. Now, having Yang Xinxin gather intelligence was really great. He patted Yang Xinxin on the head. Yang Xinxin, you are truly amazing. Yang Xinxin wore a proud face. This is nothing. Just give me a little more time, and I will soon be able to hack into the entire network of West Mountain Base. At this moment, Zhou Qi came into the living room. Brother Zhang Yi, come with me to the lab. There's a significant discovery. After seeing Zhang Yi praising Yang Xinxin, she was eager to show off her research achievement that she had been working on all night. The 2 arrived next to a microscope. Zhou Qi explained, I found that the cell activity of these 2 people is 10 times that of ordinary people from the body slices. Moreover, the way their glycogen reacts to release energy is also unusual, especially in the brain cells. Therefore, I deduced that the source of the supernatural abilities is likely from the brain. At this moment, Zhang Yi also had a sudden realization and casually praised, no wonder I felt such a strong impact in my brain when I was devouring the phasing woman last night. This discovery is quite interesting. Zhou Qi became a bit angry. This significant discovery that I've worked so hard on only earns such a perfunctory praise? You have no idea how important this is. Zhou Qi seriously added, up until now, it seems that the mutations in humans are influenced by gamma rays, but the probability is extremely low, and many mutations are negative. However, if someone could understand the principles of these mutants' mutations, then through cell transplantation or some other means, it might be possible to transform normal people into mutants. This statement piqued Zhang Yi's interest. Are you saying that in the future, the world will be full of mutants? Zhou Qi held up Lu Xiang's slice. This person is likely a man-made mutant, as he only has localized cell mutations, completely different from the natural cell mutations of the woman. His body is filled with a lot of malignant cells. It seems to be a defective product. Hearing this, Zhang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. So it's a man-made thing. No wonder it only enhanced speed and agility. Uncle Yu and that Liang Yu could totally outmatch him. In that case, the so-called elite squad of West Mountain Base is probably made up of these defective products. That makes them much easier to deal with. Then, Zhang Yi went to Lu Karen's workshop, where he had her list the materials needed to make explosives. After reviewing the list, he nodded. Finding these items shouldn't be difficult. Afterwards, Zhang Yi went to the underground training ground. He was eager to know the extent to which his abilities had improved after absorbing the phasing woman's power. Zhang Yi drew his compound bow to full draw. With a whoosh, the arrow, now carrying supernatural abilities, seemed faster, sharper, and more formidable. It hit the bullseye and shattered the target. What surprised Zhang Yi even more was that the sound of the target breaking only reached his ears after the fact, indicating his arrow's speed had surpassed the speed of sound. Astonished by such a significant enhancement, he looked at his powerful hands and murmured to himself, I never thought that simply plunging the power from one mutant could increase my ability faster than months of strenuous training. After Lu Xiang successfully sent out a distress signal, West Mountain Base immediately went into an emergency state. The information department notified his direct team leader, Ling Feng, as soon as possible. It was the first time the base had received a distress signal since its operation. We have confirmed the direction of the signal, but we can't act rashly. We must get approval from Mr. Chen first. Determined to save his subordinates, Ling Feng rushed to the first life capsule to seek guidance from Chen Xinyan. Many of their comrades had died in the snowstorms and in the experiments conducted on the modified humans after the the apocalypse, making each Special Forces member as close as siblings. But as soon as he arrived at Chen Xinyan's residence, the secretary Garo stopped him. Team Leader Ling, Mr. Chen is already resting. Please wait till tomorrow morning for any matters. Ling Feng was visibly anxious. My two subordinates encountered danger while on a mission and have sent a distress signal to the base. It's urgent. I must see Mr. Chen immediately to ask for support. Garo smiled faintly. I understand your feelings at this moment, but we cannot disturb Mr. Chen's rest. At this, Ling Feng grew angry. My team members must be in mortal danger, or they wouldn't have sent a distress signal. Any further delay and they might die. However, Garo remained composed with a smile. You should trust the abilities of your teammates. They are all excellent Special Forces members with good combat training. They can take care of themselves. The Special Forces members present were visibly furious, almost wanting to punch her for her smile. But Garo maintained her composure, her tone authoritative. If Mr. Chen doesn't rest well, it will affect the security of the entire base. Here at West Mountain Base, the leader is above everything. Ling Feng persisted. Human life is at stake. Can't you make an exception and notify him? They are valuable talents of the base. Garo bowed slightly. I am just following the leader's orders. There is nothing I can do. Ling Feng reluctantly had to return, as they were all originally soldiers and obeying orders was their duty. Garo watched them leave, her smile fading as soon as they were out of sight, continuing her vigil in front of Chen Xinyan's residence. However, just a wall away, Chen Xinyan was busily indulged in admiration from two girls who clung to her, adoringly commenting, "It must be hard managing so much every day." Chen Xinyan enjoyed the adulation, posing as a leader burdened with the worries of her people and the base. It's my duty to govern in my position, for the future of the thousands of people in West Mountain Base. A little hardship is nothing. After the session ended, Chen Xinyan called Garo in, inquiring about the noise outside. Was someone looking for me just now? Garo informed her it was Ling Feng, whose subordinates had sent a distress signal to the base. Chen Xinyan waved it off. Just two Special Forces members, and they are asking for help. Did they encounter an enemy they couldn't even escape from? But to appease Ling Feng, who is a useful asset, allow them to send a team for reconnaissance, but do not deploy any team leader level forces. Meanwhile, in the Special Forces meeting room, Ling Feng had already called together 7 team leader level figures, and Liang Yu, who had recently joined. Garo entered. I woke Mr. Chen specially for you. He agrees to send a team for reconnaissance, but no team leader level personnel. Eager and with no time to waste, Ling Feng had to be content with sending a few soldiers to scope out the situation. After the meeting dispersed, as they were heading back to the living quarters, Liang Yu spotted 2 familiar faces, Meng Zishuan. Liang Yu instinctively called out to them. Meng Zishuan, seeing it was Liang Yu, beamed with joy. Teacher Liang, it's so great to see you again. Liang Yu, however, was surprised. How did you end up in the second life capsule? Meng Zishuan smirked. We have our own skills. As long as we serve Mr. Chen well, we can live in the second life capsule just like you. Otherwise, we would end up like the other classmates you left behind written off. Liang Yu was confused. Written off? What are you talking about? Meng Zishuan wanted to say more but was stopped by Shen Moling, who was beside her, advising, you'd better say less to avoid unnecessary trouble. Liang Yu wanted to continue asking questions, but Meng Zishuan indicated, I have nothing to tell you. If you want to know what exactly happened, it's best you investigate it yourself. Anyway, we only know that ever since you abandoned us, many classmates have been taken away one after another, but not a single one has returned. We don't know the specific reasons. You are now part of the second life pod, so don't worry about those civilians from the fourth life pod. It's best if you act as if nothing happened. After saying this, she quickly turned and left, as if afraid of being implicated. Liang Yu was completely blank. She had worked so hard to protect his students, so why did they mysteriously disappear at West Mountain Base? Could it be that they were assigned to new positions, and just no one else knows? She wondered. Deciding to investigate this matter thoroughly, Liang Yu was suddenly approached by a familiar, deep voice. If you want to know where the missing classmates went, you can come with me. It was the class monitor, Wu Qingyu. Following Wu Qingyu to a corridor, he whispered, recently, due to some special work, I occasionally get called to the second life pod. Once, I accidentally saw 2 people in protective suits carrying a long bag through here. That bag very likely contained one of the missing students. Determined to find out the truth, Liang Yu told Wu Qingyu to go back to the dorm first while she secretly followed the individuals. Seizing the moment when someone was changing clothes, she knocked out the staff member who was donning a protective suit, and then quickly put on the protective suit herself. After blending in with the workers and heading towards the morgue, the leader laughed and said, this is the 8th failure recently. It seems their bodies are still hard to adapt. Liang Yu was full of confusion and fear. Adapt? Adapt to what? As she watched, the 2 placed the body into an instrument chamber and operated the console. Soon, a fierce incineration noise emanated from the machine, and shortly after, a white, viscous fluid slowly flowed out of a pipe in the machine. Liang Yu felt nauseous. Isn't this the same thing we ate on the first day? They're actually making food out of corpses for the people in the fourth life pod. Then she overheard one person saying playfully, looks like we're out of banana flavoring. Let's give them mango flavor for today. Holding up a cup of white liquid, he remarked, "This stuff is rich in protein and nutritious. If you don't know what it's made of, it's actually quite effective for replenishing energy. Today, let's make it taste better for them, so they can eat well and have the energy to keep pedaling bicycles." After discovering the secret of the white liquid, Liang Yu couldn't help but rush into the bathroom and vomit violently. She confirmed in her heart, those missing students must have been silently disposed of in the same manner. I thought they would be able to fend for themselves in the base, living a hard but secure life. But now it seems this place is nothing but a den of horrors. Had I known this would be the outcome, I would have preferred staying at Azure Sky Academy. Filled with despair, Liang Yu resolved, "I can't stay here any longer. I must find a way to take the children and leave." But she felt utterly powerless to do anything at the moment. Meanwhile, under Ling Feng's direction, West Mountain Base dispatched a 30-man special operations squad. Though the traces at the scene had been almost completely cleared by Zhang Yi, some tracks of a snowfield cross-country vehicle were discovered. Following the marks, the team quickly found Zhang Yi's shelter. On Commander Shinhan's order, the team formed up in a tactical arrangement and followed Zhang Yi's footprints cautiously. Suddenly, one of the soldiers felt a slight resistance against his leg. Before he could react, a massive explosion erupted, and Shinhan could only shout his teammate's name as the soldier was blown into unrecognizable pieces. In the post-apocalyptic world, all comrades were like brothers, and witnessing a brother's death right before his eyes filled Shinhan with rage. He immediately ordered his troops to fire at Zhang Yi's shelter, but their bullets left no marks on the walls, as if they were firing toy bullets, not even leaving a scratch on the glass. The commotion outside alerted Zhang Yi, who quickly ascended from the basement. Realizing that West Mountain Base had sent people, he immediately activated the artificial intelligence and turned on the optical protection device. As the voice command ended, a protective shield instantly enveloped the entire shelter. From the inside, Zhang Yi could see out, but from the outside, nothing inside could be seen. Observing the fully armed team outside, Zhang Yi muttered, "Finally, a worthy opponent has appeared. This is a billion-dollar shelter designed to withstand professional military forces. It would be a waste not to use it against such adversaries."